All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. It's May 27th, if you can believe that, 2021. This is a meeting of the Gainesville City Commission General Policy Committee. With the agenda, got a couple modifications. One, the first item, continued discussion GRU's proposed budget. I'm requesting that be removed and instead placed on an agenda for June 7th. We had a joint city-county meeting scheduled that got canceled, so we can hold it in place of that. And that will also allow general government to present the information that we requested at the same meeting. So removal of that item, and then that other meeting has already been scheduled. We'll place it on that agenda. And then I had a request from our Director of Equity and Inclusion, Tanisha Marshall, that we pull the charter officer complaint procedure item. She said she is not prepared to present that today at this time. And I think that is it. So with that, Commissioner A. Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the regular agenda as modified.
Motion and a second. Motion was by Commissioner A. Santos, second by Ward. Any members of the public wish to speak to the adoption of the agenda?
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor Poe, Commissioners, Nathan Scott. I am very disappointed that they have pulled the GRU proposed budget agenda item. I think that that's one of the most important discussions the City Commission should be having right now. The City Commission has forced GRU into a given direction to GRU that's going to result in multi-year rate increases. That's not the solution. I sent an email to each of the City Commissioners and Mayor last night, providing an alternate proposal that I think provides a common sense solution to the problem that balances the interests of GRU customers with the needs of the city. I hope that we'll have at some point intelligent discussion about that, as opposed to the direction that's been provided, which isn't an optimal solution, Commissioners. Clearly, as evidenced by the 5 debt downgrades, the ongoing management of GRU by the Mayor and the Gainesville City Commission, it's not working. And I think it's time to consider reasonable alternatives put forth by experts such as myself. You didn't listen to GRU, you didn't listen to me, but who's been consistently correct? So again, I'm very disappointed. I'm even more disappointed by the fact that despite this item being removed, we have time to talk about a strong mayor when that type of governance was specifically rejected by the city's Charter Review Commission. Yet it's being brought forth again here today. This is a power grab, Commissioners. Again, your priorities are not aligned with where they should be. You're talking about grabbing power.
Mr. Scott, you'll be able to speak to that item.
I'm speaking to the agenda item. Yes, I understand, but I'm making a comparison contrast. So please don't interrupt my time. Thank you. Secondly, I'm extremely disappointed that the legislative update was removed from the agenda item. It looks like the narrative may have also changed. I know within there are the legislative priorities, which include 3 projects, city projects that are within the General Appropriations Act. Each of those projects is been forwarded in the act and can either be approved or line item vetoed. And I'd be very interested to see, I think that the text here has changed, but I believe that in the narrative that the lobbyists said that they're going to continue working with the governor's office to secure approval of those projects. And, you know, I really like to see how that works out in light of the fact that the position taken by the city, yet you want something from the state. So I think I would love to have heard the lobbyists' perspective on that and how those discussions and conversations are going. I mean, I think that's what's short-sighted about the city's policy here, because you lose sight of the big pictures and don't focus on what's important. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to the adoption of the consent agenda in the chambers? Okay, over to you, Larry.
Mayor, no one for this item.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Sacco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As to the charter complaint procedures, that's a conversation I really wanted to have, and I'm a little upset that we aren't prepared to do it when it's been on the agenda at least 3 times before. Do we have an estimate of when it can come back?
I do not. This was pulled at the request of the charter officer, Ms. Marshall. And I've kind of been consistent that it's important for me for all of the charters to be able to participate in this conversation in a meaningful way, since they are the 6 that are directly impacted by this procedure. So, that's sort of where we are. Ms. Marshall, did you want to make any comments?
Mr. Mayor, I was going to answer the question. We'll be prepared to bring it back in the next couple of weeks. After last week's discussion, there were some things that we thought would be best to bring back along with the policy that we currently have.
Okay, very good. So we'll try to target our next GPC meeting, and we'll just work with the Office of Equity Inclusion and Ms. Marshall to see if that's on track to happen. Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So our first item for discussion is an update on the community engagement process.
Hi, folks. It's good to see you all. I am quite sick, so if my affect is that's why I'm on a lot of antihistamines. So let's discuss. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Since the last time I saw you, we've done some things. We've done actually quite a bit, and I'm excited to share it with you. So of the strategic plan goals, we had best-in-class neighbor services, and engagement falls under that. When we look at engagement, we're thinking of all of the players that have developed over the past year. We have our neighbors, of course. We have our community builders and staff. Myself, the community engagement program manager, City Commission, and our community cultivators program, which has just been launched with to work with me on the comprehensive plan update. And so we're really excited about that program, which is working with local neighbors to get deeper into their communities. We've been able to have some interesting conversations with folks that we don't normally talk to through this program. So I'm very excited about that. We have our community builders working group that has met 7 times over the past 6 months. And this was really an effort to promote cross-functional collaboration, to make calendars together so that we can do effective engagement and not have folks coming out 3 nights of the week. The community builders working group is made up of 14 different people from 14 different departments and 3 different charters. And some of the things that we've been working on are building shared definitions and expectations for engagement. So we've changed the toolkit to the guidebook, which you should have a copy of. The point sort of with that is that we wanted the toolkit to be something that was used consistently across numerous departments. And so it is our hope that after meeting these many times, we are setting directions together in a way that we have not done in the past across so many different departments and charters as well, so that we can more faithfully implement our goals for engagement. So a little bit about the guidebook. The purpose is to integrate neighbor and community builder feedback into the existing community engagement toolkit, and to make the existing toolkit more user-friendly and useful. So in order to do this, we had a series of interviews with staff. We had a series of interviews with local community members. And we basically asked, what's going on with engagement? What are the processes? What are the concerns? And we got feedback that has enabled us to build a more inclusive toolkit. And I think that we have buy-in across the organization among the community builders working group. So some early successes, you've seen some of these plans. The downtown plan is making use of the community engagement guidebook. G-Series infill engagement plan has made extensive use of the guidebook. And in the future, our hope is that we can start making use of the tools in the guidebook across departmental and charter office engagement planning, so that when we plan, we're not starting from scratch with every single engagement that we do. So some of the challenges that we have found, both in interviews and just in my time here with staff and community members, we have a lot of engagement. Actually, there's abundant engagement, but people in the community aren't seeing visible results. So, we may ask people, what do you want? What do you want to see? And we're hearing time and time again that community members want access to jobs. They want access to housing they can afford. They want, recently it would be a failure not to acknowledge within the context of talking about community that someone was shot and killed. They want that to stop happening, right? And so when you have limited visible results based on people's needs that they perceive to be most relevant, you get reduced trust, which leads to reduced engagement. And, that means that when we go out to the community, some of our goals, we've got this wheel. Some of the goals need to be to educate. I would alert your attention to sections 4 and 5 here of this wheel. So 4 is educate the public on city processes and problems in order to allow them to explore solutions. And so part of the function of our communications and engagement office really is going to be working on what I'm calling public pedagogy among staff. But in short, really, that's just how do we become mutually educated about the concerns that staff have for projects moving forward and the concerns that community members have. So if you look at number 5 on the wheel, provide opportunities for open dialogue, mutual learning, and shared knowledge. And so I would say that when we are doing engagement, we need to think about the previous engagement that we've done and recognize that people have spoken to us and have told us there are some serious priorities that they have with regard to sustainability, with regard to access to opportunities, and with regard to general just safety that we should be thinking about rather than going out and saying, what should we do on this corner of land that we're thinking of developing? We might think to say something like, how do we create and promote a greater sense of safety and opportunity for local communities through this process with the available resources we have, right? So starting with some better questions that are in better alignment with what the community has already told us, I think would go a long way towards building trust. So we have this trust model, it's an acronym, that engagement should be transparent, that we should close that feedback loop. If we're asking people to give us their perspectives, what we need to do when we're done is tell them how we've used those perspectives, which of them we might not have used. And so we're really working on that with the comp plan to be responsive to the feedback that people have given us, and hope to do that with future projects. We should make sure that it's sustainable, that we're preventing engagement fatigue, participation fatigue, which happens when people see us and then they have surveys and they're just not seeing the action on the back end. It should be timely. So when we start doing engagement, we have to get out early in the process so that folks understand, okay, here's what's coming. Here's what our process is. That's something that we have found among staff in the Community Builders Working Group, that oftentimes when we have an engagement process that occurs, we don't consistently share that process with folks. And so we really want to start being consistent about that. And then lastly, or second to last, that communication should be reliable. And by reliable, it means easy to understand, that people can expect to hear from us in ways that they, totally get, rather than, it's so easy as an expert, you gain this amount of expert knowledge, and then you go out into the community and you're speaking at a level that I can't understand. So that's another thing that we want to really work on in our office and across the Community Builders Working Group. And then lastly, we really don't want to engage with communities unless there are clear plans and expectations for how the community's feedback will be used. And those plans and expectations need to be shared across staff, city, and our neighbors as well. So here we have our spectrum of public participation. I hope that you're remembering this and you're probably tired of seeing it. If you're getting tired of seeing it, that's a good thing because it's becoming familiar. I think Shelby's going to talk a little bit about this, but as you'll recall, the goal of the spectrum is to make sure that we're being clear with folks about what level of participation we are building engagement on. And this is from the International Association for Public Participation, the IAP2. And that, the main thing is that when people know that I'm being called here just to be informed, nobody's asking for my perspective, we're holding a meeting and we're just going to, as staff, we're going to tell the community something, right? We're trying to inform the community. Then it's great that we tell them at the outset, here we're only trying to inform you. When people come and they are thinking about engagement, assuming that they're going to collaborate, assuming that this is a partnership between community members and the city, and the reality is it's actually just we're informing them, then that creates problems of trust. Shelby, was there anything that you wanted to add there?
I think I would just add that this has been a really helpful to bring Anne into our communications and engagement process, because I think it was important to open our eyes to the idea that a lot of the tools that we have at our disposal in the communications office are usually information sharing, outward push, and that we were doing some kind of intake. But to move successfully on this engagement spectrum, we need to do a better job of identifying how we intend to synthesize the feedback that we're getting, and clear plans for how we're going to use that feedback. And also, we've learned a lot about the way in which we are communicating with our neighbors, and from feedback have been able to customize kind of our messages accordingly, because it wasn't resonating, it was missing the mark. And so this has been a very helpful exercise for us, and we continue to learn from Anne in these processes. But I think shared definitions and having a clear visual identity to what level of engagement, when we go out and we say we're going to be engaging with the public, almost branding each of these items. We have done involving, flip charts and boards and asking for people's opinion, but the follow-up, the closing the loop, we need to do a better job of, and we're hoping with this engagement guidebook that we can set those expectations and these levels, and communicate consistently across the organization when we go out accordingly.
Yeah, thanks, Shelby. I would add only to that if you look at Involve, it's important to be transparent with the public about the final decision-making process. And we need your help, members of the commission, because we can only do that with your support. So when we start an engagement process, it's really important that we're all thinking about what will be the deciding factors. What does the decision look like, and how much control are we putting in the hands of the public to influence the decision? So I wanted to mention a little bit, something that's important to all of us across the city community builders and the community builders working group, is that we're conveying an understanding that, engagement can, for a very small engagement, it could cost, a couple $100s in staff time, or it could cost a few $1,000s for a large public workshop. And, what is the yield, I think, is important to think through here. If we're going to have a large event, are people going to walk away from that event knowing more about what's going on, and having a sense that they are better equipped to make decisions, that they better understand what is going on in the city, and that they have a clear place in the process when they walk away from those kinds of engagement? And are we going to follow back up with them? If we're having 150 people that we're gathering, it's important that we make sure that we know some of this stuff at the beginning of the process, because we're really working on having meaningful engagement with an impact. And if we're going to do that, then we need to make sure that we have a common understanding between commission and staff of what the purpose is of the engagement. We need to make sure that the community sees the impact of their participation and engagement. We need to make sure that staff and the commission and the community share a common understanding of the level of engagement from that spectrum. Are we involving? Are we collaborating? Are we completely empowering the community to make a decision? We don't generally do that, but where are we falling on that spectrum of engagement? It's important that the staff and commission share an agreement to use the toolkit across departments, and that includes we will sometimes be coming to the commission and asking at the outset for you all to participate in some of the worksheets that we're using as tools, so that we can get clarity around what the expectations for the engagement process are, what the decisions are on the table before we go out. And then lastly, that when we see that there's a polarity in the community, that we start thinking about how to leverage the best sides of the polarity. So for example, We have varying extremes around development. Some folks say, let's not develop at all. Some folks say, let's do a lot of development. That's a polarity, and we're stuck in that polarity. And so what happens when you're stuck in a polarity is you end up with the worst elements of both sides, right? Rather than leveraging the potentially the best elements of both sides. So there are activities that we can do in the future, and there are ways to start thinking about how we can leverage polarities so that we're not trapped in receiving the worst outcomes of both sides. And I think it's important for us to start thinking in those terms. So what we have here is a page from one of the many worksheets of the guidebook that we as a group of community builders are going to start using at the outset of our decision-making processes, and in order to create engagement plans that we think will have maximum impact across the organization. And so I would ask that you all, I hope you have something to write with. I'd ask that we think through, we haven't done this, so I'm thinking that for the downtown plan, you've all seen the engagement plan for that, but I want to kind of go back and revisit a couple questions about that. What is the problem to be solved, and what is the decision to be made, as well as what's the commission's position on the project? These are questions that I think if the guidebook had been finished in time, we would have brought to you, because it can be very useful if each of us fill this out, and to have an understanding that, okay, we're all coming at this from a slightly different place. And if one person thinks that the problem to be solved with the downtown plan is that we need more people and we need to maximize the economic potential of downtown, and another person thinks it's to solve the challenges of homelessness and affordable housing, we're going to end up with an outcome that's not in alignment with what the initial hopes of everyone on the commission and the hopes of staff and the hopes of the community are. And so I really want to encourage us to start thinking about these questions at the outset. And if you're uncomfortable with the term problem to be solved because it's not super positive, we can always say, what's the opportunity here? If that's your preference, what is the opportunity? So I would ask that you take 2 minutes just to think about that question. Either what's the problem to be solved, or what is the opportunity that we want to work toward on the downtown plan? Are you willing? I can't see, you're so tiny on my screen. I cannot see you. Is everybody writing? Are you game to do this?
I cannot overplay the amount of excitement that is pulsing through the commission right now with the opportunity to fulfill this simple request. So yes, we will take these 2 minutes, and we all have a pad and writing utensils in front of us, and this will make for great live television.
Thank you.
Scribble away. This is specifically for downtown, right?
Yes, sir.
This is where we need background music.
So while people are finishing up, either Ms. Wolf or Ms. Taylor, I want to get a clear understanding of how this and other sort of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, worksheets, inputs would be used. So with this, we would give sort of everybody engaged in the process this same sheet and sort of aggregate. So we look at what the commission's saying, what senior staff is saying, what sort of downtown neighbors and businesses are saying, what people that live outside, so we kind of look at all that and see where the common threads are and where the polarities are. Is my understanding that correctly?
Yeah, and with the hope of resolving some of this internally before we go to the public, so that we can be clear about what, our expectations are and what we're asking folks and who we're asking as well. So I think that the hope really is to try and go out to the public with a clear understanding of, so we can share with them, here's what the commission is thinking on this, right? And so we might not say the commission is all thinking one thing. We might say we've got commissioners who are thinking a range of things about this project, and we can convey that to the community at the outset.
Awesome. Are you asking us to share?
I would love if you'd be willing to share, if you could to sort of think through this together.
I will put myself in that place of vulnerability and go first. So that if anybody else wants to bow out, they can. I just simply wrote that downtown is an opportunity, or has an opportunity, to become a thriving central hub of our city, where people of all income levels and backgrounds can live, work, play, and enjoy creative collisions. Commissioner A. Santos?
Thank you, Mayor. Opportunity is to create a vibrant downtown that is the heart of our city culturally, that is a place where everyone can live, shop, and play, no matter their income, age, or race. It's the economic and residential hub of our city.
Mr. Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question that I want to answer is, how do we develop a framework for a city core that serves and engages everyone who calls Gainesville home and everyone who has a stake in downtown?
Anybody else want to share? Don't have to? Good. Commissioner Johnson?
Thanks. Make downtown a welcoming atmosphere for all to enjoy, increase amenities, bolster and support small business development and growth outside of restaurant and bars, increase affordable housing opportunities, and for it to become a 24/7 destination spot for all of Gainesville.
Awesome. Anybody else want to share? All right. So, Ms. Wolf, I think you got the feedback that for people willing to share it, at least at this time.
Yep.
Can you say now, like in that little micro example, then how you would take that and carry it forward?
Yeah, sure. So, what I've heard from the folks that did speak is that, there are a lot of shared values here, right? We want this to be inclusive. I think is the one thread across everyone who spoke is that inclusion is a huge priority here, that we want benefits of downtown as a place to work, play, and live should be distributed across everyone who lives here. And so I think that's really powerful to be able to go out to the public with this like a shared understanding that, look, the commission does have this priority, and then maybe there are some differences, with regard to the emphasis being placed on specific aspects of what that means. So is that more about housing? Is that more about thriving small business? Is that more about, having larger business there, right? So some folks maybe spoke more specifically to what this might look like than others, but I do think that it's important to go out with that shared thread, as well as to go and be able to just convey a little bit about the differences between where different folks on the commission are falling on this issue. Is that sufficient? Does that sufficiently answer your question, Mayor Pope?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I think, Ms. Wolf, you're really getting to an important, and I think sometimes difficult point of, and sort of fact of this job is that, while we each have our own sort of life experiences and policy perspectives and goals and sort of beliefs and what we think should or shouldn't happen, we only function, we only move any decision forward as a body. So I think that process of taking our individual thoughts and views and sort of motivations for any certainly big decision, and then figuring out, okay, well, where does the body rest with that? That's hard. It's really hard to do on the fly here, like in the middle of a discussion for any particular item. And for really impactful sort of, long-term decisions, the comprehensive plan, or, what we do at the power district, or, things like that. This would really help me sort of marrying those two parts, the individual and the group kind of decision-making process, and how we sort of get things done, if you will.
Sure.
Yeah,
there.
If you'll
Sorry.
pause, actually, Commissioner Ward put his slide on. Mr. Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Wolf, thank you for getting us to this point and for this particular slide. I really, really like, and I'm guilty of it myself, I like when we force ourselves to answer what is the problem we're trying to solve, or what is the achievement we're trying to achieve. What are we trying to accomplish is the question I try to ask myself. And I'm guilty of it myself, of not answering that question before I move forward often, and I always regret it. If we start with what are we trying to accomplish, I think it's easier for us to get where we're trying to go. Because over and over again, if you ask a group of 7 people to solve a problem, but you don't lay out specifically what the problem is and what you're trying to achieve, then when those 7 people walk out of the room, some of them are going to be disappointed with wherever we ended up. But if we're really clear about what we're trying to accomplish from the beginning, we have a much greater likelihood of success. So thank you for starting there.
Sure thing. So, yeah, I mean, I can see a few different ways forward with this. On major projects, I think it would be important that we are all addressing at least these questions. And it might not be feasible to do that in a way with the full body of the commission in a sort of public context, in which case, if that is not feasible, you might be seeing these questions coming to you when folks are talking about engagement for major events. And then in the presentation about the engagement plan, we might reflect back to you what we've heard, what the common threads are, and maybe where there are some differences before we go out to the public. So thank you for participating in that activity. So the Community Builders Working Group, and it's been great. It's one of my favorite things that I do here, working with these folks, because they're amazing. And we're getting things done, and in a way that is enriching, mutually supportive. So that's great to see that kind of work happening within the city. So we have asked, we've come up with a list of asks of the commission. And the first is that we consistently use the spectrum of public participation at the start of every engagement, so that we're all on the same page about, are we informing, are we partnering, are we collaborating? That would be one ask. The second ask would be clarity around how the commission will use the feedback at the start of engagement processes. So by that, I think what we mean is when we begin the process, how will we take that feedback and look at it, right? Will the commission take a look at it and sort of pick out the sort of top themes? What can we tell the public about what's going to happen to the feedback they're giving? And so we need some support from you all in order to do that effectively, and we need to have those conversations at the outset. So this is one of our asks of you all. And then lastly, we need some shared clarity around a vision for successful engagement. And we need a shared definition of engagement. And so this is another one of those activities that I would ask you to do. I'm feeling a little guilty to take 2 more minutes of time, but I would ask that when you all have time, and I will follow up, if you would please just take a couple minutes to write down what does engagement mean to you? And we don't have to do it in a public context, but if I don't hear back from you soon, I will follow back up. So we don't have to do this here right now. It could take a while, but I think that's it. Thanks so much for listening, and thank you for your patience with this process. It's been a learning process, as any collaborative effort is. We're pleased to be at this point, and yeah, we look forward to moving forward together.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ms. Wolf. Thank you for all of your work on this. It's outstanding. Commissioner Duncan Walker.
Thank you, Dr. Wolf. I wanted to speak to the last slide, the second icon in particular, because that's something that resonates with me. I have heard from a number of neighbors who have oftentimes involved themselves in community engagement activities, and they leave a lot of times feeling as though the information that they have given is not going to be used, or they leave with those questions. And so I want to thank you for that second icon there, because I do believe that we need clarity. One of the things that I'm really hoping to dismantle is an overarching idea that when we ask for people to participate in community engagement, that it is almost a disingenuous activity. And part of that feeling, I think, arises from the idea that when people come out and they share their expertise or they share their ideas, that they don't see those ideas being used in any way. So I'm really, really looking forward to us as a commission honing in on that second icon there and providing some clarity around how we will use their feedback. I think it's very important. We want to build that trust. If we're going to ask our neighbors to come out and give of their time and their expertise, I think we really need to work on ways to actually do that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So what I would like, and Betsy, I know you're listening to the meeting back there. I would love to schedule a follow-up meeting with the team just to talk about this more. You've really piqued a lot of my curiosity and gotten me excited about how we can apply this. You know, I want to talk to you about how I can apply this individually, you know, as I speak with different members out in the community, and, you know, I go on my neighborhood walks and things like that, just sort of very kind of informal, kind of routine. And then I also want to discuss with you how I and the commission can help sort of embed this in more of our, you know, decision-making processes. So just know that you very much piqued my interest and got me excited, and let's follow up and talk more, and then I can better understand how we can keep this, you know, moving forward. I really appreciate that. Let's see, Commissioner Hayes Santos.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I think you might have answered this, but I kind of want a little more clarity on. I think one of the issues we have is asking for, there may be a project and we don't really know what it's going to be, and then it's very kind of early in the process and we're asking for engagement. I mean, it's hard to give feedback when you don't even know what's kind of possible and things like that. How do you, is that kind of deciding on when the timeline, like, we come up with depending on what the project is, but sometimes it's better to come up with like the parameters or a plan, or here's what we are thinking before it goes to the public, so it's not just running through I guess that's kind of the clarity of what we're asking for. But does that question make sense?
So I think you're asking, when we have a project with sort of not a ton of parameters around it just yet, how do we go about narrowing the parameters before going to the public? Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, kind of that timeline of that, yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, it depends on the project, to be honest with you. I think a great example of this is 8th and Waldo Road, and I don't want to get too deep down the path of any particular project, but when we start asking questions about what's feasible here, across different staff, we realized, wait a minute, we really need to do a more extensive questioning around the feasibility of uses at that particular site. Because the concern would be that we go to the public with this really broad or open-ended question, what would you like to see here? And then if it's not possible, we've lost trust for all of the people that we've asked questions of. So better to do that work on the front end internally. So that's definitely one way. I think the other way is getting clarity around the commission's priorities for spaces and for allocation of resources before we go to the public, as well as getting clarity around feasibility from staff. Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
Yes, yeah. Thank you, Mayor.
I think if I could just chime in too, I think one of the things we hear often is we kind of we get stuck there a lot, because if you start doing your due diligence on any project, just to that you would start off, if people see movement, they get concerned that there's something happening, and you know, nobody's spoken with them about it. So I think we have to identify what our timelines are, and those are going to be different with every project. And then be very clear, if we are going out for some sort of engagement or information sharing, that's where we are in the process. We're information sharing about the fact that we're doing due diligence, and any kind of decision making or any of that will happen after, and we'll keep you up to date as we move forward the timeline. And that could be 2 years from now, and not on any specific project, but we've heard time and time again that the timelines are problematic for folks, and that something could take 2 years from start to finish, and something could take 2 years just in the due diligence and investigation piece. But people want to be involved in some way, shape, or form at all stages of the process, and we just need to be very clear when we're going out what part of the process we're in, and if we're just information sharing or decision making.
All right, thank you both. We have Commissioner Ariola.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for the presentation. Has gotten me thinking about a lot of different things, but I'll also take one of those follow-up meetings and think deeply about my definition for engagement. Because I think that this, what I want to ask sort of is a little bit more background for how you will see the administration of this sort of engagement policy. I mean, I think ideally what we would see is sort of each public-facing, service-facing, neighbor-facing entity of the city that has direct contact, that you have that kind of training for each employee. I think that this has to be something that the whole government sort of embraces and really internalizes in their own operations, because I think one of the keys is that it's continual. I think that, as we mentioned, there's different techniques for engagement that are appropriate at different times as projects become available, as we reach different decision points, and the resources, and it's because it's resource intensive, particularly with time. So I think that for commissioners, I think it's great for each commissioner to ask, how can I apply this guidebook to my office's engagement? I think that's a really great point that you made, Mayor. I think those are the baselines to start, because what I'm interested in is figuring out how are all 6 charter offices and how are all of our, as I said, sort of service-oriented leaning departments going to sort of receive the appropriate training to make sure that all of these community engagement efforts are used, and not just used in benefit for us, but also for the neighbors, and just how we get that training. Because I think that's very, very, very key for this to be sustained long term, I think.
All right, thank you, Mr. Philbin.
Mayor, Commissioners, I just wanted to echo on what Commissioner Ariola just said, and thank the other charters for participating in the or sending people to participate within the Community Builder Working Group. I just want to make sure everybody understands that this effort was not a single charter effort, but one where we really tried to bring the other charters in, so this book can really be a tool for everyone to use.
Yeah, thank you for reminding us that it takes a village, and a lot went into this. Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it's absolutely true that every contact with a neighbor from a city worker has some potential for engagement. But I want to quote from page 6 of the manual what engagement is not. Public engagement is not customer service that involves daily interaction with neighbors, public information in the form of records, et cetera, et cetera. That all plays a part, but I want to be careful we don't confuse intentional practice and process of engagement for a purpose on a given item with daily customer service, because they're not interchangeable phrases. So I want to be careful how we use that. And again, I took that directly from the manual here, so thank you.
All right, thanks. Really excited to continue working with you all on this. Thank you again. I know this has been an incredibly heavy lift, and you know, there was no sort of clear blueprint or map to help you get from inception point to where we are today. It was a iterative process as you went, which is one of the hardest things to do, especially with the organization as complex as ours. So thank you for your leadership on this and your continued, if you will, engagement as we continue to build this out. Okay, we'll now take comments from the public.
Thank you, Poe, Commissioners, Nathan Scott. So just want to say that I think Commissioner Desmond Duncan Walker made an excellent point about engagement. Appreciate her thoughtful and insightful comments. The fact of the matter, though, Commissioners, is I've been asking as a citizen for engagement for over a decade. 5 GRU debt downgrades later, you still aren't listening. So everything that we discuss is complete hypocrisy, Mayor Poe. Unlike the slide, there's no cost to my engagement or the prudent and fiscally responsible advice that I and others from our community have provided. We don't need milk, cookies, or free food. But you still don't listen. How do you explain that, Mayor Poe? Your emotions swing from being excited to claiming to be terrified, but your political ideology seems to prevent you and the commission from listening to your constituents that are either trying to help you or disagree with you. So if we're really going to have an intelligent discussion about community engagement, we talk about the cost on the slide of having neighborhood charrettes and all these other things y'all do, but you don't even listen to the people that take the time to come for free to speak to you at this podium. And I think any objective citizen, irrespective of political party or taxpayer in the city of Gainesville, would agree with that statement. I mean, your own constituents are lambasting you in public comment that you don't listen to your constituents. St. Michael's, gentrification of Porter's community, GRU. I don't like to have to come down here and say it, but I mean, why can't we have a dialogue? I've asked repeatedly to have engagement on a GRU issue to try and help you in the wake of 5 GRU debt downgrades, the last of which was clearly avoidable. They cost us $32 million in additional borrowing costs on top of the $27.6 billion from the prior debt downgrades, which all happened under your tenure, Mayor Poe, since 2012. But we can't have a dialogue. Why is that? Why are you so headstrong and myopic that you can't have a dialogue? At least engage in a dialogue. Give us more than 3 minutes to have an intelligent discussion. You might learn something that you haven't considered. But that's not entertained. So the fact that we're having this community discussion about engagement is comical. It's well intended, but we know reality versus fiction, Mayor Poe. So thank you for your time, and I hope, since GRU is the most pressing issue facing the city right now, that you would entertain giving me more than 3 minutes to present something to the commission and have an intelligent discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry, do we have anybody on the line? Larry, we can't hear you if you're talking.
Mayor, can you hear me?
We can, yes, thank you.
Sorry about that. Brian O'Brien should be on the line. Mr. O'Brien?
Hi, Larry. Thank you very much. And commissioners, appreciate the opportunity to comment today. I'm especially glad to see Dr. Wolf. She's excellent at her job and very well informed as to the current matters in the city. She was a new hire a couple of years ago. We had the opportunity to meet, and I have greatest respect for her and Shelby Taylor doing their best to communicate with the citizenry. And I would like to help Ms. Wolf to understand what's going on. The person sitting in the center of the dais has done his best, as Mr. Scott just said, to ignore in-person city commission meeting comments, which is our number one method of communicating with each other. It allows a dialogue from the actual commissioners to the citizens of what they would like to see. And this whole toolkit thing Mr. Poe and his cronies have come up with is nonsense. It throws all kinds of interference into the process of communication. It's gone as far as restricting speech by arresting people and dragging them out of the chambers when he doesn't like the message. And it's very unfortunate. Any input that people do give to the city, he's been able to weaponize the information against people. And that's unfortunate circumstances playing out right now in real time at this meeting. For another wonderful, effective communicator, Ms. Marshall. The overall goal, so that you can understand it, Doctor, is that Mr. Poe needs new sources of money and power to bail out his legacy of big spending and big, expensive, failed new ideas. The power plant and all the other nonsense that he gets into, just look at your GRU bill, look at the rates, look at the increasing cost of power, water, sewer, trash would be next. He had to defer that a little bit. Every fee that he can charge has been raised. It's all driven by this extraordinary $2 billion of debt for this little city.
Mayor, that's 3 minutes.
All right, thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Appreciate you calling in. Larry, do we have anybody else on the line?
It's not going to stop.
Yeah, Melissa Montilla is our next speaker. Ms. Montilla?
Hi. Hi. Well, thank you so much for Dr. Wolf for this presentation. I was here just to see it. And I am currently in the process of advocating for my neighborhood. Several of us are. And all of the commissioners have been incredibly generous with their time. And so I deeply appreciate that. However, it is very difficult to find information on what was happening with the power district. And the fact that a few of us have professional experience and time privilege really amplifies to me that we also need equity in how the city continues to engage with its citizens. Not everyone has that kind of time privilege, and judging from the previous comments, there was a trust issue going on, and so I think that finding that equity and giving Dr. Wolf the resources, I mean, I'm assuming that we could do that, would be amazing moving forward to help us all stay more connected. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mayor Debbie Martinez on the line. Ms. Martinez?
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much for taking my call. What this sounds like, this method called community engagement, what it reminds me of is decades ago, the city and commission spent lots of money and time on a method that they called charrette. And that turned out to be a big charade, because when they engaged the citizens, it appeared to me they were just pretending to listen to the citizens, and they dismissed the citizens and steamrolled the commission's pet projects the way they wanted them done. And that's my big concern, is that we're going to spend a lot of time and money doing something that we have regular city commission meetings that citizens attend, and if you would just start there by listening to those citizens. I hear people call in all the time, Ms. Silva and others, and it's just thank you for your time, and it just moves on. And it seems like the city commissioners have their agenda, and oftentimes they're pretending to want to have citizens engagement, but they're just going to move on with what they want to do, and the citizens be damned. So thank you so much for taking my call.
Thank you.
And Mayor, those are all of our callers.
Okay, thank you all for calling in and sharing your thoughts. Do appreciate that. Once again, look forward to a follow-up meeting. I would say as soon as you're healthy and feel up to it, and we'll see how we can continue building this awesome new tool that's going to, I think, really help us tremendously make good decisions. Mr. Feldman?
I just wanted to, again, thank the team, and especially Ann for shepherding this, and also coming in today after being extremely ill over the last 24 hours. So she's really dedicated to this process and this project, and wanted to thank her again.
Yeah, get some rest and feel better. And when you're 100%, then let's get together. All right. Thank you all. Really appreciate that. Great way. And I was, I wrote down just so I wouldn't forget, for a moment there, we came magnificently close to having a sort of interaction that I think was the original intent of the General Policy Committee, sort of writing our thoughts down, sharing them, discussing them in an informal way. It was nice. And I look forward to doing more of that as we sort of move forward. I've already talked, this is sort of neither here nor there, but I've been talking with the charters, and I think next week when we look at the culture study and some of the recommendations that came out of that, one of the things is kind of rethinking the general policy process. And so we'll have a brief discussion, but I'm going to suggest to the commission that our first meeting after the Independence Day recess, when we usually have our administrative meeting, that we really look at GPC and what it is meant to be, and how it's functioning now, and how we can improve it. So we can do more of that. So we really, it's so unfortunate that we have so few opportunities to just have good conversations about what we're doing and how we can work together. And so I think that's a good opportunity to do that, and we can, I think, can overlay this process with that. All right, up next, we have the American Rescue Plan update. I believe we asked staff to come back with a framework for distributing and prioritizing that money. And so we will go right over to Ms. Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At last GPC, we were asked to bring back a framework for the American Recovery Funds. So I'm actually going to turn that over to Ben. Him and his staff very quickly worked on putting together a framework for the commission. So Ben.
Yeah, thank you so much. We did. We put it on you quick, and I know you were out as well. So thank you for doing double time on this, Mr. Howard, and your whole staff, Ms. Marshall.
Can't hear you, Ben.
I always felt like we should have that music like in the olden days when the channel would go out and a little cartoon would come up and say technical difficulties and it'd play some sort of like elevator music.
Hey, can you all hear me now?
Yes, welcome.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that, technical difficulties. I'm gonna share my screen and talk about this budget tool that we have created. So on the screen, you'll see this draft of this equity COVID budget tool that we've put together. I'll say, from the start that this is very much a draft, and we're presenting this to you for feedback, so we can make it the best version of this that we can make it. So I'm going to present it, and then I'll just share one other bit of sort of context about the process and how this may ultimately be used. Here we go. So the COVID budget tool, the intent is really to assess whether or not the programs that are being proposed for the Rescue Act funding are being used to address issues that arose out of the COVID-19 crisis, as well as support the folks that were most greatly impacted. And so we started, and we have the name and the amount of funding that is required for the program, as well as who is the lead contact for it. There's a section where we ask people to identify the eligible use. There are some eligible uses and ineligible uses that are specified, and we have a link to that for reference when people are filling this out. There's fairly general guidelines on that, so we don't anticipate that much will be kicked out or made invalid because of the eligible use, but it's a good thing for folks to just double check, because there are a couple things that are not allowed to be used, the money's not allowed to be used for. The next section is about alignment with the strategic plan, and it asks for folks to identify strategic goals from the strategic plan that their program is in alignment with, if any, as well as the top high and top policy priorities, if they're in alignment with any of those. And then we get to the equity section. We ask for a description of the project or the program, and then we ask for, in a few sentences, what disparity the program seeks to alleviate, and what population will benefit most from the program. And we're looking at race, gender, ethnicity, geography, and income. We're not expecting that every program is going to address all of those, but we're asking people to be specific about which one of those they are intending to address. We ask them to describe specifically how the program is designed to specifically serve that population, and what is the estimated number of people the program is projected to impact. Then we ask, in a few sentences, identify what populations will be burdened by this program and how the program is designed to mitigate unintended consequences. Then we ask for data. So the data is to demonstrate existing disparities and the impact of COVID-19 on the population that's identified. And if possible, to use local data. This is often not available, but when it is, it will kind of make the proposal that much stronger. Then we ask, how will the success of the program be measured? And we're asking folks to be specific and explain how they will collect disaggregated data on race, ethnicity, gender, income, and or geography. This is especially important if you're saying that your program is going to be specifically targeted or support certain groups. We want to see how you plan to measure that in fact was the case on the back end. and then what the plan is to report that data collection, those kind of conclusions from the impact of the program back to the commission and to the community. We have a rating system that we use. This will also be accompanied with written feedback. So people will not just get a single rating, hey, this was a good program, or this was a better program or best program, but we'll also have written comments that we provide on each section about what could be done to make it potentially stronger. But the rating system is a good, better, best. The good is the proposal includes at least one way to enhance resources or services to underrepresented communities. The better is the proposal includes at least two ways to enhance resources, and the best is that the proposal includes at least two ways to enhance resources, it's data-based, and it addresses a systemic problem or has a system-wide approach to building equity. And then the other option is that it does not advance equity if we can't see any evidence of that. But I would think that if people get to the point of submitting this something through this tool, that they will have addressed some of this if they fill this out. The last part of it is about community engagement. And so what we're looking for is in this section is, does the proposal meet a community need as articulated by people who are most impacted by the existing disparities made worse by COVID? This is not something that we will do as part of this assessment. That's why it's kind of in a separate section. It's really just a note for people about the process. And what we are envisioning is that folks who have proposals about this money will, for how to use the money, will submit this first part up through the equity component. Staff from the Office of Equity and Inclusion will provide written feedback as well as a rating and return it to them with some suggestions for how it could be made better. They'll have an opportunity to do that. And then finally, will take all of the proposals in their final form and submit them both to the community for community to give feedback on which ones they feel like are most in alignment with their goals and needs, as well as to the commission will get the proposals with the feedback and the rating that the proposal got, as well as community feedback about which proposals they think will have the greatest impact, and any feedback that the community will have around, that might have about other proposals that weren't in the group of proposals that were submitted all together. So that's kind of how we're envisioning the process, and very open to feedback and thoughts from all of you. One of the things that needs to be considered is the timeline. So how much time do staff have to come up with their proposal and fill out this budget tool? How much time does the Office of Equity and Inclusion need to review the proposals and give feedback? And then what's the timeline to do community engagement and sort of follow some of the best practices that Dr. Wolf just outlined for us in the previous presentation. So I think that's all I have, and turn the floor over to all of you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Howard. Commissioner Saka?
Thank you, Mr. Howard, for the presentation and throwing it together as quickly as you did. I do really appreciate a lot of the tool, especially making sure that we identify the eligible use of it and the way it aligns with the strategic plan. I think we often get great ideas and don't remember that we spent 2 days locked in a room figuring out our strategic plan and the goals that we have for our city. So I do appreciate that kind of keeps us in line with that. I do, however, have a few concerns. I think, so the question of what population will be burdened by this program, I think you can have any population burdened by any choice to use the money in one direction versus another. And anytime you choose one project over another, there will be a burdened population, and it might be difficult to identify what it is, or it could honestly just be everyone but the one we're serving. So I don't feel great about that question. I don't know how well it could be answered at going through the form. The other one I have concerns about is the data collection about measuring the success of the program. And I'm thinking in the context of my main ask that I've asked is to clear the GRU debt for those neighbors who had issues during COVID. So those that are in the repayment plans, how to clear that out. GRU doesn't have ethnic or race data for those customers, and we shouldn't. That's not a thing we should keep logs of. At best, we could offer you geography. We can't offer the rest of the data. So I don't know how successfully a lot of these metrics could be reported in a context like that, or for a lot of our other programs, because it'll be data that we just don't have, that we probably shouldn't be in the business of collecting, that might make neighbors feel uncomfortable if we're asking for their income and their race and start keeping lists of people. That to me personally sounds sketchy. I know a lot of our neighbors would feel uncomfortable if we suddenly started keeping public record, publicly available lists of certain information. And so that one I think could be tweaked a little on, saying there should be some kind of data gathering to measure success, but not, but specify that if some of these elements cannot be collected, that it is okay, because you won't be able to get that data in every scenario. My last concern really is the turnaround. If your department has to kind of filter through these and review them, let's back up. If departments or staff persons will have to fill these out when we issue, this is the direction we want to go in some of the projects, I wonder about how detailed some of them will have to be, and how much time will have to go into just filling out the form, and then how much time your department will have to kind of turn those around as mere proposals for use of that money, and then the actual execution and use of that money to help our neighbors. And I normally love forms. It just sounds like a small bureaucratic nightmare that delays the impact that this money could have for our neighbors. And I'm going to bring it back to the context of the GRU debt write-off. In the time that we are planning on how to explain the benefit of this, or get community engagement to demonstrate that it would be needed and good, and I think we can all agree this would be a good thing for racial and economic justice and disparity, or I guess equity. A struggling family might be making that second payment just to keep their lights on, and might make a second payment. And so that's money that they've been putting into GRU that could have been alleviated in the time that we were spending going back and forth on the forms. Does that make sense? And so I worry about, and the same with other projects that we have. So if we want to impact health access in the time that we are figuring out how to fill out the form and how to grade it or score it, people are not accessing health, and that could have been a service we've had out on the street already. And so that's my concern. I understand and I agree that we need some kind of metric to prioritize which projects we move forward and to demonstrate that they are good for the community and equity. I worry about the bureaucratic element and the time element delaying our neighbors getting what is owed to them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Santos.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the quick turnaround on this. On the priority section, I think we should also add, during that strategic planning, we also have the priorities that the charter officers are working on that we also prioritized. So probably putting those top ones on there too, since some of those aren't funded as well, and those were also top priority for the commission. Just they're the charter officers working on those. In terms of coming back, I think we should come back after our recess with our prioritized lists that we had. I mean, the rules still aren't finalized yet. They're still going to come back with some more guidance on them. And so I think if coming back at our first kind of general policy meeting after the break, I think we'll give enough time for staff and for us as commissioners to come back with kind of what are our priority funding projects, and then discuss it at that first meeting when we come back. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Howard, for putting this form together. Clearly, a lot of thought has gone into it. I thought that what we were going to talk about today was what the framework would look like for us to come back with ideas and how we would process that through. And I understand that this is a piece of that. but it doesn't really speak to how we as a commission and charter officers bring ideas forward and how we sort those through for the things that get funded. This is, again, a piece of that. It adds information it helps us think better through the ideas that we might bring forward, but it still doesn't help us work through how we prioritize the funding. And that's not a knock on your work. It just is, it leaves a question unanswered, a pretty big question unanswered. So I hope we can work through that this afternoon too. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Variola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the work on this. I think it gets us to the next stage of the conversation. But Commissioner, you just said something that I hadn't really thought about fully, because I think when we talked about receiving Treasury guidance, we almost assumed that was the sort of the shoe to drop. But it may be that they may be more restrictive ultimately in how this money gets administered. And what I recall of the TARP funding when President Obama passed his stimulus, so to speak, Tim Geithner at Treasury and Rahm Emanuel at the White House were picking every dime that went to governments and entities to make sure that money came back to the federal government. This is obviously a different kind of program, so I don't imagine that they're going to have a whole lot of those receipts requirements, but at the end of the day, I think it's in our best interest to have these types of forms and processes for budget items. I don't think we need to do this for every single person who would apply for either individual assistance. But I think that as a government, we should rely on tools like this so that we can always demonstrate the rigorous thoughtfulness with which we put into expending these federal funds in the event that we get tighter oversight either by the federal government or I don't want to give any ideas to the Florida legislature, but they'd regulate the air you breathe if they could.
Okay, anybody else? Commissioner Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you for your work on this, especially in such a short time frame. I'm going to go back to why I asked for this process, or why I asked for this plan, and I'm going to take us back to the first kind of wave of COVID-19, and there were funds that were to be expended throughout our community. And the guidance that we got back from the city manager's office was much different than would have been what I would have liked to have seen. We ended up at a place that I felt was a compromise and a good compromise. But the reason why I asked for this is because I want to make sure that we absolutely involve our neighbors in making these decisions, and that it is a process that is 100% fair and 100% transparent. And that has not been my experience in the past. So fast forward, here we are, we have $34 million, and I want to make sure that this process is fair and transparent. I believe this gets us in, we're in a step in the right direction with this. I agree with Commissioner Moore that we need to talk a little bit more deeply about the continuation of this process. I'm hopeful about what will come out of this. But it is my intention that we get input from the community about this, and that this is not, I'm going to use the same, the same term that I used last time, is that this is not the Hunger Games between all of us. That I've always had concerns. I expressed some last week that I'm not exactly sure where some of the guidance is coming from for some of the work that happens on this commission, whether or not it's truly coming from the charter officers or whether it's being fed through different channels in order to elevate some of these projects and that we have on our plate now. And it is also that reason that I am fundamentally actually disagree with the strategic plan and the process that we went through. So that puts us in a difficult situation where I don't necessarily trust the process. I don't trust the outcome of the process. And then we're looping back and feeding into that with every decision that we make going forward. So that's going to be difficult for me to navigate, I should say, with all the decisions that we make. So going back to this tool and the strategic plan alignment, it's not only with the outcome and the 2 days that we spent, but it's also with the execution of that and the plans and the priorities that are elevated and how they are done and how they are elevated. So my preference is for us to talk about what this process looks like going forward, either with or without the strategic plan alignment, and also keeping a lot of these questions that have been asked of us and of our projects as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to all my colleagues up here for their thoughtful input. I feel like this is a really well-developed tool to get all of us thinking about sort of how we come to a decision point for this money. So I'm just thinking, okay, between now and X date, the charter officers, the commissioners, and members of the public, whether they represent an organization, a neighborhood, or just their own individual point of view, can take this, use it, and submit it for review. And I think it's a good accountability tool. So I'm just thinking for me, some issues that I've already spoken about as priorities that I think that we should consider. Ensuring that I sit down and really think through these questions, like number of people impacted, who can be adversely impacted. Like I'm already thinking through that in my mind, how I identify and quantify that. So I think all that whole part of this works really well for me. And there's nothing on this I would take out or modify. I think, going along with Commissioner Johnson's and Commissioner Ward's request, I think a little bit of clarity before we move on today about what our expectations are for what's next. I see Ms. Marshall and Mr. Howard both have their hands up, so maybe they're going to answer some of these. But I'm imagining that in the next few weeks, we all take the time to use this to sort of identify priorities and how they're going to impact our neighbors. There's a due date, and then that will give the Office of Equity and Inclusion time to analyze these and give that feedback. That's I didn't mention that before, Mr. Howard. I really appreciate that opportunity that you're going to give anybody proposing a use of these funds to say, well, we gave it a better rating, but here's what could make it best. Like if you could clarify these things or modify it a little bit, then you can take it up to the highest level. That's awesome, because that's what we all want. I think we want to make sure that we're thinking about every way that this is going to positively impact our neighbors, and thinking about as many of those unintended consequences or ways to sort of amplify and compound the impact that any particular decision would make. So all that's fantastic. I really, really, that's not something that we always have an opportunity to get, that sort of immediate feedback and then ways to improve. So, I'm at the will of the commission for sure on timeline. I think Treasury's not going to cement its final rules for another 45 days or something like that. Is anybody have a clarification on that, Mr. Feldman?
So, Mayor, we really don't know.
Okay.
We do know that we are likely have to file our first report on how we intend to spend the money by either the end of July or the end of August, but we don't know what detail will be required with that report.
Okay.
Or whether it will just be the first tranche or the second.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah, that's, all to say, we have a little bit of time. Commissioner Sacco, I get your urgency. We've got neighbors out there that are in immediate need. But we have to make sure whatever we do is going to be defensible in front of the Treasury Department. And we also can't make perfect the enemy of the good on this. I mean, that's, we're certainly going to get to a point where I know that we're going to, at some point, argue about specific sort of elements, and those I'm sure will be difficult conversations. But in the end, there's enough opportunity here to do a lot of good for a lot of people, and if we can keep focused on that, I think we're going to come out with a really good, agreed distribution. So yeah, the commissioners, that's what I'm thinking. We take a couple weeks, we fill these out. And again, Ms. Marshall, Mr. Howard, as you come back to, I think, answer some of these questions that have come up, what I'm assuming is I fill out this form. Let's say one of the things that I want to prioritize is identifying low income, high energy consumption residences, and then putting money to fixing that problem. So I'd fill out a form for that. And then if a separate item I want to prioritize is helping build out and support the community resource paramedicine program, then I would do a separate form for that. Like, so for each one, I would sort of fill it out, identify an amount of money, and then go through and answer all the questions. So that's what I'm assuming now. Tell me if I'm off track on that. And then I think if you can talk about timeline a little bit as well. So I'll start with you, Ms. Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I wanted to go back to a couple of things that I've heard. To Commissioner Ward's point about prioritizing projects, one of the things that I think that the commission could actually use as a guide is our actual rating system, the good, better, best system that we have in the form, and really start thinking about what your projects look like and where they may actually fit into that good, better, best model. Because I think that, from what we've heard, like most of the goals that we hear people want to attain, they want to hit what's best. So you can really start thinking about your projects, just thinking about the rating system itself from the good, better, best model. And one of the other things that, I wanted to address is I know that Commissioner Sacco brought up the use of the word, like who's being burdened. I think looking at things through an equity lens, we're always going to be looking at possibly who's burdened, because we don't want to burden someone by trying to help someone else. And I recognize that Commissioner Sacco wasn't here when we started talking about the equity work and the equity toolkit, and that's one of the steps in the toolkit. So I just kind of wanted to offer to maybe, have a one-off so we can go through the toolkit and kind of explain the steps in that, so you'll understand why we actually use that question.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Howard?
So my Zoom froze for a little bit while Ms. Marshall was talking, so hopefully I'm not just repeating things that she just said a second ago, but I think I caught most of it. So the only piece that I would want to add was some concerns about what happens when data isn't available or doesn't exist. So we know that this is going to happen. what we're trying to promote as best practice is being data informed when we can be, and stating where we don't have the data that we would like to have, because that helps us develop systems for data collection for the future, to get progressively better and better at being data informed when we do these types of processes. So that's not to say that we will, toss a proposal because we don't have the data for it. There's an understanding that there's some things that we just don't have data for, but it is part of the consideration. And I think that everything else Ms. Marshall covered that I would have shared.
Can one of you please talk about timeline? Like, what is realistic for us, members of our community, staff, to use this tool, get it back to you in time for analysis so we can get into decision making in, let's call it mid-July?
So I would have to kind of look at a calendar and work backwards from there. I think part of it is how much time is reasonable, to ask people to fill out the tool in, and then what time is left between then and July for us to review, give people feedback so they can update them, and then sort of the community engagement process that kind of flows naturally after that. So that's something that we can probably start working on and get sort of a draft through a memo to all of you soon.
Well, let me just throw something in, just so I know
target.
whether I'm like way off base here or in the right ballpark. What about 2 weeks to get all these requests turned back to Office of Equity and Inclusion? Is there a major objection to 2 weeks by anybody on staff, anybody on the commission? No? That seems reasonable to me, but I'm not. My sense of reasonable is not always the same as others. Charters, do you have a concern? Does that seem reasonable to y'all? I'm going to assume silence means no, I shouldn't. Ms. Feldman, Ms. Baby, go ahead, Ms. Feldman.
Yeah, from my side, I think we certainly can fill out the forms within a 2-week period. There's still, again, some guidance that's still coming out, and I would like the city attorney at some point to help us guide through whether we're meeting the guidance or not. So I don't want to speak for Ms. Shalley's shop.
Yeah, and so Mr. Feldman, for that, I mean, I think it's unrealistic to think that some of us or some organization or some part of the city will put something as a request and then we'll later find out, well, it's not gonna meet the guidance. I mean, it'll get kicked out because whatever, there's just further clarification. So, I mean, I think we'll all do our best to look at the guidance and only submit things that we're relatively confident that will stand up to the scrutiny. At the end of the day, that just, that might change. Just because the final, sort of legal guidance hasn't been released yet. So yeah, we'll absolutely have to depend on the attorney's office to make sure that they'll pass muster. Ms. Baby?
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. We really appreciate Ms. Marshall's willingness to listen to some charter officer input. We just talked about risks in the process, and I really like the tool that they came up with. Our office, from the perspective of my office, we just like to spot check here and there and, just make sure whatever process you all do agree to, we are following that process. So that will be the extent of our role in so any checkups, checking the data, making sure the process is being followed.
Okay, very good. I'm going to make one additional request of my colleagues, and this kind of goes back to my time when I served on the Community Development Advisory Board. I would hope that your totals that you request add up to the amount of money that we have. I had a committee member on the board that would sort of, in her recommendations, fund every agency at the full amount they asked, which is, of course, usually 10x the amount of money that we had to distribute. So I think just making sure that, you're not requesting more than we have. Some folks might request less. There might just be 2 or 3 or 4 priorities that you really want to make sure that you focus on and spend your time on, and then, you know, let the chips fall where they may. But if you're requesting like $87 million worth of spending on stuff, you know, I think that's going to lead to a sort of unhelpful outcome. 86 it is. I didn't say it. I did say that, didn't I? But the facts be the facts, and so we have what we have, and we'll just make sure not to. So that's, I mean, I'm just telling you how I'm going to do it. I'm on each form I fill out for each item. I'm going to put the dollar amount that I expect, that I would like to see, you know, encumbered for that portion, you know, until I get to the number. Does that seem reasonable? Any objection? Okay, so we've got a busy 2 weeks. Commissioner Johnson?
So 2 weeks puts us at the 10th, that Thursday. Do you think that we can have a couple extra days and say by Monday the 14th?
Yeah, that's absolutely it. Any objection from especially EO, who's going to be analyzing this, making the due date Monday the 14th by 5? Close of business? Is that good? Okay, Monday the 14th, 5, close of business for anyone's requests. Commissioner, oh, is that the light for that, Commissioner Johnson?
It was, yeah.
Okay. Okay, anything else here? Okay, we'll go to members of the public. Any members of the public wish to speak to this process? Is really not a motion, but you know, agreed upon path forward. Nobody in here, Larry. Do you have anybody on the line?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you again, Ms. Marshall, Mr. Howard. Really, really appreciate the solid work in a short period of time. It's really helpful to how we're going to make our decisions. Okay, up next we have the mayor's charter amendment. It's not the mayor's, it's not my charter.
Yeah, the possessive.
The governance structure charter amendment. And so Commissioner Ariel will recognize you for this.
Yeah, clearly, I don't struggle to select names. So thank you. Before we get started in presentation earnest, we'll wait for Adrian and Harvey to get back. I don't want them to miss a beat. But I just want to start this conversation by first asking everyone to keep in mind that at the end of the conversation tonight, I'm not going to ask anybody to decide or make up their mind on any future decisions for this government. I really want this to be sort of the classroom moment where everyone asks the tough questions, has the difficult debate, and really dives into the subject matter. Because how this all got started, I began to think to myself as we went through the year with the pandemic, and different types of governments were able to respond in different ways to the pandemic. And I think that with all the experience on this commission, I really feel like we are a commission that has a lot of ability and experience to have this conversation in the public. And I think that this is one that we deserve to have, because I think that subtle changes to governing structures, whenever people ask me, what are the challenges? That's a common question we all get. What are the challenges of the job? I answer a little bit philosophically. People, institutions, and ideas. They all present their own challenges in terms of how do you collaborate with people to get things done? What do the institutions allow for that collaboration? And how do ideas move through institutions? And so this charter is our institutional key. And so that's why I want us to have this discussion. So first, I'm going to ask Zariah and his research to present, to talk about different forms of mayor forms of government that they were able to research. And then I'm going to present some work that I put into our own charter as a baseline for where we can start some of these conversations about changing our structure of government. And doing so, the timeline, I think, is on our side, because to put any charter amendments would require a vote by the people on the ballot. And so to do that, we have to get lots of advance notice, both so that voters can be informed, but also so that we can get the appropriate information to the supervisor of elections in due time. So having said that, I welcome your engagement, and I'd like to pass it off to Zariah to get us started.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Commissioner Ariola, for this opportunity to share on a strong mayor and the different forms and systems that can be utilized from a structural standpoint. So, hi, my name is Zariah Foster. I'm the Policy Oversight Administrator here in the city of Gainesville, and I'm a member, if you will, of the Policy Research Team. Myself and Morgan Spicer will be discussing today or presenting today on research as it pertains to a strong mayor city structure. The process that we're going to follow, we're at phase 2 of the policy research process. The policy research process is a process that was adopted by the City Commission prior to my arrival, and it has phases that are attached to it. Phase 1 being research and idea formulation that we gather from either the City Commission, a committee, or a commissioner, individual commissioner themselves. And so we take that idea and we, as I like to say, we put feet to it. They cast vision, they have an idea of something they want to present or talk about or discuss, and we help them kind of formulate it and shape it so that it can come back to GPC in a better form so that we can have a conversation about it. The research is there to be a tool that we can all be familiarized, all being our neighbors, staff, and commissioners, so that we can have a better conversation around a particular topic or entity or issue. And so the research is not there to be complete. It's there to be a conversation starter. It's there to probe questions in your mind. So after you read it, you should have a lot of questions, but it should give you enough that you have a good idea of what it is that that particular commissioner, commission, or committee wants to discuss and wants us to consider. So we're here at phase 2, and we're back here doing this presentation for you guys here today. In terms of our overview, here's a brief overview of what we will discuss today. First, we will provide descriptions of a strong mayor versus a weak mayor system. We will look into the current City of Gainesville system, and then we will review several examples of cities that have switched from weak to strong mayor, along with some cities that attempted to switch to a strong mayor but failed. So without further ado, I want to pass it over to my colleague, Ms. Morgan Spicer, and I will come back shortly and provide comments. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Zariah, and thank you, Mayor and Commission. As Zariah said, my name is Morgan Spicer, and we can start off with a description of the weak mayor system. So the primary feature of a weak mayor system, also known as the council manager system, is that a city manager who is appointed by the City Commission serves as the chief executive of the city and oversees the daily operations and administration of the city. Within the weak mayor system, the mayor will typically hold a ceremonial role where they will serve as a representative for the city and are generally the presiding officer of city commission meetings. There is, aside from these roles, the mayor's powers are very similar to a traditional city commissioner. However, there is some variance within weak mayor systems. For example, the mayor may be directly elected, as is the case in Gainesville, or the mayor may be elected as a traditional commissioner and then appointed mayor by the commission. Regardless, a weak mayor traditionally has no extra authorities outside of acting as the presiding officer of the city commission and as a representative of the city. Under a strong mayor or mayor council system, the mayor serves as the city's chief executive. However, there's also a lot of variance as to the extent of a strong mayor's executive authority. Generally, a strong mayor will have hiring and firing capacity of charter officers and department heads, and may also have additional authorities such as veto authority over the commission and the authority to prepare an annual budget. It is typical that even when a mayor has the ability to hire and fire charter officers, their decisions must still be approved by the commission as a whole. A strong mayor may or may not serve as a member or presiding officer of the city commission, or a strong mayor may only serve as a voting member of the commission in the event of a tie. And a strong mayor may also be given the authority to appoint a city administrator to assist them in handling the day-to-day operations of the city. In the city of Gainesville, we have a hybrid weak mayor system, as the mayor of Gainesville is a directly elected position. However, it remains a largely ceremonial role. The charter officers in Gainesville, including the city manager, are appointed by the city commission as a body and can only be removed from their positions by the city commission as a body. The Gainesville City Charter does create this structure, and thus any change to the structure would require a charter amendment. Within the state of Florida, about 2/3 of the cities have a weak mayor form of government. While it is most common that larger cities have the strong mayor structure, in Florida there are both large cities such as Tampa, Jacksonville, St. Petersburg, and Orlando, and smaller cities such as Plantation, Pensacola, West Palm, and Palmetto, which operate under the strong mayor system. So these are a few cities that have switched from strong mayor to weak mayor. We will review some successful switches such as Pensacola, Pueblo, and San Diego. And then we'll also be looking at a couple of cities that attempted to switch but failed, including Clearwater and Miami. There are also several other examples outside of these cities of successful and unsuccessful switches from weak to strong mayor, in addition to some examples of cities which shifted in the opposite direction, which are detailed in our report. An example of a Florida city which switched from a council manager to a council strong mayor system in recent years is Pensacola, Florida, which has a population of just over 50,000. In 2009, Pensacola residents voted to adopt a new city charter which placed executive powers in the hands of a full-time mayor, with the change officially occurring in 2010. The proposal, which passed with 55% of the vote, included revisions such as removing the mayor as a voting member of the council, although the mayor did continue to preside over city commission meetings, and giving the mayor the authority to appoint a city administrator, city attorney, city clerk, and the heads of all departments. All of these appointments are still subject to approval from the city council, with the exception of the city administrator, which is able to be appointed solely by the mayor. While the mayor needs approval from the city council to remove the charter officers, the mayor does have unilateral authority to remove any department heads. The mayor was also given the authority to prepare the annual budget and was given veto authority over council decisions. Pensacola did formerly have a strong mayor system prior to 1931, and the shift back to the system was primarily due to an economic downturn in the city, where residents felt that a strong mayor would be able to bring several economic development industries back into the city. In 2017, voters in Pueblo, Colorado, which has a population of 110,000, approved a switch to a strong mayor form of government, primarily due to frustration over a lack of policy resolution under the council manager form of government. The effort began in 2015 when a group called the Committee to Elect a Mayor began working on a proposal to change the form of government. The proposal was finalized in 2017, and the City Council approved the ballot measure to appear on the 2017 ballot. Pueblo voters approved the measure primarily due to frustration that the council manager form of government made it too easy for city leaders to pass the buck and leave policy matters unresolved. Supporters believed that the strong mayor system could improve transparency and government responsiveness, and that the city needed a full-time elected official to help solve complex policy problems. Under the strong mayor form of government, the mayor was granted the power to appoint department heads, although these appointments do still have to be confirmed by the city council. The mayor was also given the authority to control and direct the executive branch and does not serve as a sitting member of the city council. The strong mayor was also given a salary of $150,000 and the ability to appoint a deputy mayor who shares administrative duties. Pueblo modeled their structure after Colorado Springs. However, they did vote against a similar plan in 2009. The primary distinction between the 2009 failure and the 2017 success is that in 2017, the city council did not actively fight the proposal, and there was also a greater understanding among the public about the purpose of the switch. The messaging remained largely the same. However, Colorado Springs switching their system in 2010 showed Pueblo voters that such a change was possible. However, since the shift, officials in Pueblo have reported that some of the bureaucratic adjustments to strong mayor have been challenging. For example, operational changes which in theory are simple, such as appointing a chief of staff to the mayor or hiring a public information officer, were difficult due to determinations over whether such changes would require additional charter amendments. This highlights the importance of clearly establishing the roles and responsibilities of a strong mayor in any charter language. San Diego switched to a strong mayor council form of government on January 1st, 2006. The system was approved by voters in November of 2004 as a 6-year pilot experiment that would end in December of 2010 unless additional action was taken, and ultimately this initiative was extended permanently. While attempts at shifting to a strong mayor had been made in San Diego regularly since the 1970s, voter discontent during the city's pension and security scandal in 2004 made the switch happen, and the initiative ultimately received 51% of the vote. In the new system, the mayor was removed from the city council, and the city council selected a presiding officer amongst its members and also appointed an independent budget analyst to review and provide budget information to the city council independent from the mayor. Additionally, the city council added a new independent legislative analysis function, and the mayor became responsible and accountable for day-to-day administration of the city government. The mayor proposes the city budget, appoints department heads, and has veto and line item veto over legislation and budgetary matters. After the initiative passed in 2004, the city also created an additional at-large council seat to return the council to its original 9 members. So now we're going to discuss a couple of initiatives that were unsuccessful in regards to switching to strong mayor. A strong mayor initiative appeared on the Clearwater ballot in 2018, which would have eliminated the city manager position and given daily authority to the mayor, who would have then been removed as a member of the council body. The specific charter language regarding the strong mayor initiative was created by a task force made up of city council members and citizens. The initiative was primarily supported by the Clearwater Downtown Partnership, which advocated for the switch to strengthen the city's vitality to match cities such as Tampa and St. Petersburg. Critics, meanwhile, argued that the council manager form of government is more stable and common throughout the state, and that it is necessary to keep politics out of daily city operations. And ultimately, this initiative received 40% approval and failed to pass. And finally, we'll discuss Miami, Florida. In August of 2018, the Miami City Commission approved an initiative to let voters decide whether to change the city charter and replace the city manager form of government with a strong mayor form of government. The issue was brought to the commission's attention due to a citizen petition which collected 20,000 signatures. Under the amendment, the city manager would be replaced with the mayor, and the mayor would serve as a non-voting, non-member commission chair. The mayor would also be granted the power to appoint and remove the city attorney, clerk, police and fire chief, department directors, and employees. The mayor would thus be granted full executive power to execute policy and would become the lead decision maker for the city's budget. Additionally, the mayor's salary would increase from $130,000 to $187,000. However, the referendum received 36% of the votes and failed to pass. While this initiative failed to pass, Miami does reveal the spectrum of what can be considered a strong mayor. For example, Miami is not currently considered a weak mayor system because the mayor is still considered an executive who is able to appoint the city manager that runs the city. However, this appointment is still subject to commission approval, and the city manager officially serves as the city's chief executive, while the mayor serves as a sitting member of the commission, and thus it is not considered a true strong mayor system. And I'm going to hand it back over to Zariah to discuss the rest of the policy process.
Thank you so much for that, Morgan. Hopefully you guys got a good idea of what we're going to be discussing today and kind of how the process of a strong mayor versus a weak mayor system is traditionally formed. So this is the conclusion of our report with more detail within the full report in your backup. So at the beginning of the presentation, I discussed the first 2 phases of our policy process. And here's an overview process after stage 2. So phase 3 is timeline development. It's where the charter officer determines the time, the resources required to evaluate the proposal and create community engagement if necessary. And the item returns to GPC for approval of the charter's timeline and plan. That way, you know what stage is going to come back to you and how much time it's going to take to get it accomplished. Phase 4 is a full staff analysis and proposal development. And it's at that stage where the charter officer or officers together and staff assess whether or not this GPC directive, what are the impacts, what are the operational impact, the physical impacts that are necessary, the risk that are necessary and the requirements. And then the charter officer and staff conduct community engagement. Stage 5, the proposal returns to the city commission meeting, and in phase 6, it's implemented. So we kind of wanted to outline those phases because this is just the beginning of the process. And as our commissioners already said, we look forward to the discussion that you guys have moving forward on this item. If you don't have any further questions of us, we want to turn this back into the hands of Commissioner Ariola and the mayor. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Ariola. Anything to add before we begin with general discussion?
I have an additional presentation, but I do want people to ask questions now pertaining to the general research.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead with your presentation.
I'm gonna get it ready. Hold on,
Okay.
I gotta share my screen and all that.
Commissioner Saka?
I do have one question, and I'm not good with math, much less time math, but let's say hypothetically, we all approve this, we want it to go forward, it has to be put on the ballot, that would be the 2022 ballot, simultaneous with the 4 elections, including the mayor's election that is going on, and you would not know what type of mayor you would be voting for? Is that correct?
Depending on how the wording in the charter amendment was. I mean, it could say that the effective date is for the
after the next election.
Following that. I mean, there'd be a lot of ways to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and there would be, in that
That's a great question. In that event, there would be plenty of time for voters to inform themselves on the language of the charter amendment. There's going to be a midterm election, all of the races. This will be decided, whether this goes forward or not, will be decided well in advance of that. So I think the timeline is perfect. I don't have any desire to push this into the election calendar year. I'd like this to be decided in this calendar year, and so I don't have any concerns about that. I think our voters have shown many times that when we put charter amendments in front of them, that they very deeply appreciate those opportunities to vote.
Commissioner, could you please pause for a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, just to Commissioner Sacco's point. Like recently, even when we changed our elections, there are like rolled out things where it doesn't start for another 4 years or 2 years or whatever it may be. There are other ways to do it. Thank you. Even when we rolled out our mayoral for the city of Gainesville, it was a future year that it actually happened.
Okay, over to you.
You good? Okay, thank you. Thank you, commissioners. If you all will follow along with me, in front of you, you should have a copy of the first 3 articles of the city charter. They are the most consequential articles for this discussion. So I'm going to dive right into it. And just thank you, Zariah and Morgan, for that research. That was really helpful for me because it helped me to understand, first of all, that we can define ourselves as a hybrid weak mayor system. So the discussion I'd like to have is, how do we talk about a hybrid strong mayor system? And so to begin to have that conversation, we should probably ask, how did we get to the current form of government? And I sort of have a joking answer. It was people like us who made changes to the charter to get Gainesville to the government that we have today. So the mayor office was incorporated in 1927. Mayor commissioners were elected by rotation until 1997. So in that system, any one of us would have been mayor for a couple of years, and it would have been a 5-member commission. And so after 97, we started to popularly elect our mayor, and they are vested, and to this day, vested with the powers of the presiding officer, subject to the rules of the city commission, which I've lost count how many times we've changed since we've been involved. The city commission itself previously was a 5-member body, including the elected mayor commissioner. Once Gainesville hit a population of 110,000, if you look in your ordinance book, that is in Article 2, where it talks about what happens when the population goes over 110, move to a 7-member body, including the popularly elected mayor. Still, all legislative powers vested in the city commission with the independent charter offices. I tried to do some light research to figure out the start date to some of these charter offices. I couldn't ascertain that for all of them, but charter offices were all added by ordinance. Some were founding offices. But in any respect, they all take up the same space in the charter, which is the 3rd article, where it defines their roles and responsibilities. And if you'll notice, some of those roles and responsibilities are defined a lot more heavily and detailed than some of the other charter officers. And that is, I think, a reflection of some offices are a lot older than other offices. And I think that when we changed to popularly elected mayors and we changed our systems, I think some of the larger charter offices got the attention to give them specific powers that were outlined. But each charter officer is given very broad discretion and independent authority by the charter. So that's the current form. So the current form of government, if you really want to boil it down, all commissioners and the mayor, we have 1 vote during official proceedings, and we have 1 voice, an unofficial voice, the bully pulpit, so to speak. 6 charter officers directly employed to administrate the government, all vested legislative powers, and majority to direct charter office administration. That's our power as a commission. The charter officers, they're independent administrative authorities, 1 voice during official and unofficial proceedings. They do not vote. They take our direction. They have 7 direct supervisors and all vested administrative powers and duties subject to direction by a majority of the commission.
And the reason why I phrase it that way is because in the event that the majority of the commission does not give direction, then that discretion is completely up to the charter officers. And that's an important point to make because in the system of government that has been talked about a little bit, the office of the mayor in many cities is elevated to have more discretion in those types of situations, which is the direction that I think I want us to move in. So a hybrid strong mayor form for Gainesville. What does that mean? I asked myself, how can we do more by changing as less as we can? So this is what I came up with. There are obviously 3 key components. Article 2, the composition of the commission, the subsection 8, where it talks about the mayor, and then Article 3, where it talks about the charter offices. So number 1, I think a major change to make is to have a hybrid strong mayor where all charter officers serve at the will of the mayor, subject to veto by the city commission. Those vetoes will be defined by the rules of the city commission, because I think that because we give this commission's official proceedings the vested powers of the government, I think it should remain in the official meetings where we have that vested power. And if we have a strong mayor who has the ability to take action with charter officers with the commission's tacit approval, I think that mayor should be subject to a potential veto by a majority of the city commission. And I think that the commission should be given the authority and the power to define the rules of that veto based on the government. So you can have a commission that can set parameters around this mayor's ability. So it's still a very collaborative government. The mayor should still remain the presiding officer. I have no desire to see that change. But I suggested the idea of having a mayor that no longer votes in official proceedings. And I think this is a trade-off, because I think that if a mayor has administrative authorities, I think that that should be one of the main focuses of the mayor's office next to the presiding officer role. And I'm not so certain that a vote is necessary to see the efficient running of this form of government. The mayor will still be popularly elected, but it is a fact that if we are going to have a situation where an elected official is going to be given this type of accountability, then we have to have an accountability clause, which is otherwise known as impeachment and recall, in the event that would need to happen. Changes to the city commission. So we would no longer be direct supervisors for charter officers, but we act as checks and balances via the rules. So our offices would still have to report to city commissioners because we are the legislative body, and we can make direction from the dais to each charter office. I think that's an important thing to distinguish here. In this hybrid system, it is not the mayor's office which can give sole direction to charter offices. The majority of the city commission, same thing as today, can give that full direction at any meeting, at any time, and the mayor's office can sort of be the step in if that doesn't happen, or if the commission can't find consensus. I think there's a lot of policy discussions where we find ourselves trying to find consensus, and I think that a system in which one elected official has the ability to make that clearer, I think we can see progress there. So one thing that I need a lot of community input on is how this affects the changes to the city commission. This will likely add one commissioner to the board. If we're removing a voting member, we would want to add a voting member to keep an odd number. That just seems to make good sense. And the commission will have all veto powers. Changes to the charter offices, they continue to report directly to the mayor, but they must work with the city commission. The important thing here to reflect is in section 3, section 2, section 2.10, interference with charter offices. This is a clause that is important to keep because in my view, it guarantees the independence of charter offices so that they cannot be compelled to take any direction that is not direction from the body itself. Because I think this is really, really important to keep in this charter, because I think one of the main criticisms that you find for hybrid strong mayor systems is the potential for
powerful elected officials to give direction outside of the official proceedings of these public meetings. And that's what we don't want that in Gainesville. What we want is we want an accountable elected official who can be held accountable and hold officers accountable, but also this commission accountable. And I think the only way to guarantee that is to maintain the non-interference clause with the charters and have the commission continue to be our own governing body, and to have the charter officers be the administrators of this government. What this change proposes is, rather than this commission going through long, drawn-out hiring processes between the 7 of us, that process be consolidated under the office of the mayor, and conversations about employment, termination, or retention of officers can still happen in very much the same way, except there will be one elected official who is ultimately accountable for those proceedings. So here comes the sort of, it took me a couple months to put pen to paper on this because I wanted to make sure that I had the right verbiage. So if you look at section 2.08, where it talks about the mayor's office, it talks about the mayor has a voice and a vote in the proceedings, no veto, and shall not have administrative duties. The only language change we have to make in this particular section of the charter is to say that the mayor shall have certain administrative duties. And those administrative duties are the hiring of charter officers. That's the only additional authority that is being given, is this direct line of reporting between the mayor's office and the charter offices. That is the only major change that is being suggested to the mayor's language. And of course, removing of the vote would be my suggestion. So this is just sort of that continued, and what that would look like in terms of actual language. You see that at the top there. I've got this thingy, keep on pointing it with my finger. And then the yes vote, yes voice, no vote clause, as I came to call it, basically saying that the mayor continues to preside over the meetings but does not have a vote in the meetings. And then we would have to define what an impeachment process. There's already state law for recall, but we would have to define an impeachment process in the charter. Changes to the city commission. The only language changes, all of this is already in the city commission's charter purview. The only thing we'd have to add is just the veto power, which is that sentence right here at the top, including full veto power over mayor's administrative duties. We would also have to change the fact that we are no longer the supervisors of each charter office. And we would have to add one member in section 2.01, which defines how many members of the city commission sit. And for the charter offices, the powers and duties remain in each office. The independence remains. We would only have to change one line in each of their section to indicate that they are now hired directly by the mayor. Excuse me. And that veto authority is defined in the rulemaking. So that's it. That's the big idea. But it's open right now. And the reason why I'm bringing this to this body, and I'll be frank, I understand the Charter Review Commission had this discussion, and it was decided to not be taken up. That was something where I've had conversations with members of that commission who wanted that conversation to keep going, and members who ultimately voted to not. And I really appreciate that process. And I want to point out that actually the CRC provides sort of the ultimate sort of solution to this, which is that the charter will always be under review every so often. So every system of government, whether we pass this or not, is going to be under review every 10 years. So it's not a permanent move that we would be making. Although I think that it is a better form of government, and I think that people would see the benefit immediately over the next few years. And so I think that in those scenarios, I think people would want to see this kept, but it could be taken up by the CRC again, or not, depending on those members. I think we're the body to handle this because Number one, I'll put our mayor up a little bit. You know, we have a very long tenured and experienced elected official in the mayor's seat, and I think that lends a lot to a discussion about governance. I think the fact that most of us have been serving for many years is a great place to start. And honestly, I think that what I am proposing is open to change. I want your input. I thought about how I wanted this to go forward and what my ask was going to be from you all today. And what I ultimately decided was I really need to hear how y'all feel about our current form. You can respond to some of my ideas or all of them or none of them if you want, but I really want this dialogue to get going because I think there is a better form of government than what we have right now. And I think that for too long, people have known this in Gainesville, right? Like we have known that our structure of government is an impediment. And I think that you don't have to make radical changes to make effective changes. And I think that less is more. And I think this is a very subtle but important change to a system of government that is only a couple of 100 years old. During the pandemic, the chair of Alachua County, Robert Hutchinson, acted as sort of a unilateral officer at the county, but the way that he collaborated with every elected official from our commission to the smaller commissions in the county was exemplary, and it shows that just because you concentrate a certain amount of authority, it means that you're concentrating accountability. And by concentrating accountability, I think you are asking people to rise up to that level. And I think that you are asking future mayors of this city to raise their game. And I think that we expect so much out of our leaders, particularly the mayor. The term mayor goes as far back as I could tell. There wasn't a direct point of origin of the term itself, but it's one of the oldest surviving terms in leading and governing cities. The first democracy, Athens elected a leader out of every assembly, and that leader could call the direct democracy to have votes in the city whenever that leader needed to. So when people hear strong mayor, I think sometimes they think of New York City and other cities of the like, but that's not what we need to be thinking at all. We just need to be thinking, how do we set up a structure of government that allows us to be accountable, that allows us to be effective, and ultimately that allows us to be good stewards of this democratic government that we have inherited. So I've talked a lot. Let's keep the conversation going. That's my ask. Let's talk about it. We need to involve the community, long-term discussions, ideas for next steps. We could do an informal task force, a subcommittee, re-agenda this, dedicated workshop. I'm open to all of it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. So we'll start with Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioner Ariola, for bringing this forward. I think that this is the exact right place to have this conversation, and I'm excited that we are all actually, we all have an opportunity to voice our opinions about it. I'm going to go back to our earlier conversation and to Commissioner Ward's kind of question / point when we're talking about community engagement, is I'd really like to get an understanding from you and from anybody else that supports this is what the problem is that we're trying to solve as you see it.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
It isn't so much trying to solve a broken problem. To me, this is about taking a document and making it work better, because the current system of government has a good decentralization of authority. You have 7 electeds, 6 charters. That's a great checks and balance for government authority. What I think happens in a system where you have so many supervisors and so many independent departments, I think that you lack a central executive that is accountable directly to elected constituents. There is a difference between being hired by an elected body and being voted by the people. That is a difference, not just in paycheck in Gainesville, but it's a difference in, I think, philosophy and purpose of being in the government. And so, in my view,
the problem that is being solved here is not per se a problem, but it's creating a better system that provides for, in my view, more accountability for elected officials in this elected body. But I think it also allows us to clear up any situations where there may be lack of consensus, or rather not clear up, it helps us get to consensus quicker, I think, when you have a mayor who can now, because they're not a voting member, they have a different role in the government to help the city commission accomplish their goals, which I think is a job of the mayor. And ultimately, this is about, how do we accomplish our policy goals? And so what I've just noticed in this current system is that we try to do a lot, and when we can't reach that consensus because our system is so decentralized, when that decentralization directly affects our work, I think that this centralizes one aspect of that system, because we're not going to give the mayor, for example, the mayor will not, have the authority to sign purchasing agreements and things like that. I'm not suggesting that we turn the mayor into a CEO or anything like that. Does that answer? Does that help?
Thank you. Yeah, it does answer my question. I will give my preliminary thoughts on this. You asked us to keep an open mind when discussing this issue, and I really have tried to do that. I've tried to understand what the different scenarios are, the types of folks that would be leading, the effect on our elections. I've tried to think about voter turnout and how that affects this system, which I think it actually does negatively. I think we need a much higher voter turnout for us to consider something like this if we are talking about accountability. Two, unequivocally, I believe this is entirely too much power for one person. So it ultimately goes against my values about governance and how I believe personally we should lead. Collaboration and compromise are important to me. And I believe the current system that we have lends itself to that. Doesn't always work, but I believe that that system is set in place for us to talk through issues, try to come to a compromise, and try to collaborate. So my preliminary thoughts about this, until I am convinced or I hear something different, is that this is entirely too much power for one person. And also, I'm deeply concerned about this effect that the effect that this would have on minority voices on the commission and minority voices in the community. It's already tenuous. All of that needs to be addressed, as well as voter turnout, before I would consider moving forward with this conversation. I do want to thank you, Commissioner Ariola, because this is, like I said, this is the place for this conversation to be had. And now you know publicly, and everybody else knows publicly where I stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Commissioner Ariola, for the hard work on this. I think the answer, or at least where my thoughts are, Commissioner Johnson, on what the problem is and why kind of, I mean, I don't know if I support the hybrid version, but I do support a strong mayor system. I think first, it provides accountability for the voters to who's actually making the day-to-day decisions. We don't have that today. Secondly, our charter and how it's written is written to take power away from the people who actually are elected. It puts power into appointed people's hands, and I think it's better to have that power into people who are elected by the voters. Thirdly, I think going towards a more stronger one actually creates a better check and balance, where you have a kind of legislative body and an executive body, and they have to work together to get things done. The legislative body is the one who passes the budget, has to pass the laws, does all of that, and then the executive has to work with that and get that done. So I think it does create collaboration. And to your point on number of voters, I do hope that us moving to August will help that. But also, I've looked at some data, and cities that have moved towards strong mayor actually get higher turnout because people think now there's somebody they're voting for who actually is going to do stuff and actually has the power to do stuff, so they feel more compelled to vote. So I think one of the reasons why we should consider a strong mayor is that people think the mayor has power, and I think when people think of cities, they think the mayor can do everything. I'm sure you get that all the time. They think you're magic wand and you fix everything. I think it's a much more understandable form of government for the public because it's kind of what you learn in school, and it's there, and it's more relatable as you it's the government that the state has, and also at the national level as well. So I think that it makes our government more understandable, which makes it more kind of attainable to members of the public, because if they can understand, I don't think most people understand, I didn't understand it before, about how, and I used to watch commission meetings when I was in high school, about how does all this work? We have a charter officer and they do this, and it's a very convoluted kind of process we have now. So by having these kind of clear channels of a legislative side and an executive side, I think that makes it more attainable and more open for the public because they can understand our government better. I think another reason why is it allows policies and issues that we have seen languish for years and years and years can actually get done, because there is kind of that push to get it done. There can be a clear direction. To kind of Commissioner Ariola's and kind of some of your thoughts on what you proposed, I don't think the mayor, I don't think the mayor should sit on the commission for a couple different reasons. If the mayor's not on the commission, then there is I guess we would remove the sunshine rule so they can actually, commissioners can talk to the mayor. And I think that is a good thing of being able to have that discussion. Secondly, I think it doesn't create enough of a check and a balance. I think having two separate bodies creates that check and balance. So it's not just together, it really is a separation, and that creates a check and balance. And I think that's important to have check and balance. I think it's something we're missing right now in this form of government. I also, on a hybrid model, I think it'll create a lot of confusion if the commission can also give direction, but also the mayor. I think I'm more in favor of a clear one where the legislative branch is the commission and the executive's office is the mayor, where the legislative office or the commission would pass a budget, they would pass laws, they would take all of those functions, and then the appointment of the charter officers would have to be approved by the commission. I think that's an important thing, and also I think the high-level directors would have to be approved by the commission. They would be put forward by the mayor, and then the commission would have to approve those. So that's kind of where I stand. I appreciate your hard work. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. David, thank you for all the work that you put into this. I know it's been a passion of yours, and you clearly put an enormous amount of effort into it. And to the policy office as well, you all, I know, Zariah, you've been working on this for a long time. And I appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion. Like Commissioner Johnson said, this is where we should have the discussion. Before I get into what I see as the positives and negatives of strong mayor, I will tell you that I think we missed a step. Often when we bring things forward to talk about putting them on the ballot for a charter change, it bubbled up from the community. Not always, but often with the big changes, they bubbled up from the community. And I've heard people talk about strong mayor for a long time, and probably most of you have too. But usually the people talking about it are former elected officials and people who hang around the process. because it's complicated. I don't know that most people have given most voters have given a lot of thought to what form of government we have at the city. So I understand why it hasn't bubbled up from the grassroots, but it's a big change to make for not having bubbled up from the grassroots, if that makes sense. I would like a stronger mayor system, because there are things that the mayor just can't do. The mayor, as a couple folks have pointed out, people in the community think the mayor has powers the mayor doesn't have. And then they get disappointed that the mayor after mayor after mayor doesn't do what they thought they were going to do when they elected them, because they don't have those executive powers. This is a legislative body. The mayor is more like the Speaker of the House, a directly elected Speaker of the House, than an executive. And most folks don't realize that when they vote for a mayor or for the commissioners. You know, they vote for us thinking that we're going to go make this specific change when we're not the executives who can do that. The mayor doesn't have even a spokesperson, which is challenging when you get to be a city this size. Not that we're an enormous city, but we're a big enough city that it would be helpful for the mayor to have staff, at least. This kind of doesn't address that, though. This really puts the mayor in a position to address, to manage 6 charter officers, which has its merits. I can see that being a useful thing. On a day-to-day basis, you essentially have an executive department of 6 people who, answering to 7 people, always in the public, is a huge challenge, as we've seen over and over and over again for a long time. So there are definitely positives to this. I think if I were inclined to, if we were going to do something like this, I would like to see it invest, not more power, different power in the executive branch that would be creating. And really, as kind of as Commissioner Santos was talking about, set it up as this is the executive branch, this is the legislative branch, and they need to work together to get things done. Or not, as happens many times in those forms. Is there another city that's doing something very similar to what you're proposing?
The biggest change that I recommended was similar to Pensacola, and the change that they made to make the hybrid. But I want ours to be sort of custom made for Gainesville. I did look at cities where the mayor is a separate executive outside of the city commission. That's a conversation I think worth having. I think the reason why I suggested to go in the direction is I was thinking a little bit more to use your reference with Congress. I'll use mine. I thought of it more as a parliamentary system where you have shared executive and legislative governance held within the elected body that is the majority of the city commission. So that's why I went that route. But I think it could work effectively both ways. And really quickly, part and parcel to your point, Adrian, without a voting membership, the question of the Sunshine Law is answered in that as well, because it speaks directly to voting bodies.
So here's my biggest sticking point with the whole thing. There are a lot of issues of power, to Commissioner Johnson's point, that have to be addressed before we could do anything like move forward with any system. But my biggest sticking point is twofold. Again, the fact that it comes from inside the house instead of from grassroots.
Yep.
And that in 2018, this commission, I think unanimously placed, because it's hard to not be unanimous and then place it on the ballot, put the idea of a charter review commission on the ballot. The people overwhelmingly said, yes, we like the charter review commission idea in 2018, And then in 2020, we put that Charter Review Commission to work. And now it feels a lot like we're saying, okay, the people, you missed a spot. Because we're only a couple of years removed when this would go on a ballot from the Charter Review Commission's work. If we were halfway between Charter Review Commissions, it would feel easier to me than immediately following at the very next opportunity. Tell the Charter Review Commission, we really appreciate your work, but you didn't do what we wanted. That's a big sticking point for me, and something I would have to get over before I did this now. I'm not saying absolutely not. I'm very interested in hearing from everybody, and when I say everybody, not just up here, but a community conversation. So, but I would have to get past the idea that we put a process together for the community to tell us what they wanted to see changed, and this wasn't it. So I need it to be a not inside process if we're going to do it. I like the idea of a stronger mayor. And maybe there are things that we could do via ordinance that would give a little more opportunity for the mayor to get some work done, for the mayor's office to get some work done. So I'm interested in having a further conversation, but I'm not ready to put it on a ballot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Sacco.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, Commissioner Ariola, for the presentation, and to the research department. I think it gave us a good framework and base to have this conversation. That said, there is one substantial hurdle that my brain can't overcome despite all this information. And maybe it's just my brain that it's programmed to think, how could this go? What's the worst way this could go? And that's just how my brain always goes first. And my brain goes to, how does someone who is wildly popular but horribly incompetent get to this position? And then they hire and fire left and right. And how does that undermine our city structure? And part of me wants to go, that could never happen. And then I remembered 2016. It is a very real possibility that a completely, unqualified person who is popular with the people gets elected, and then they have the administrative abilities and oversee the choices for our departments and their heads and our charters. And that is terrifying to me. What I think I like best about the system that we have now is that ideally we have a professional who knows the industry of management in that position, and we have a choice on how to pick them. And what I especially like about the commission makeup right now is any one of our neighbors has 4 chances to have their voices heard. They have 2 shots at large, they have a shot at the mayor, and they have their own district. And so with that model, your voice could be the majority. And even if it isn't, you still have at your district level that more concentrated view of how things should be or how the city's actions impact you and your neighbors. You get that opportunity. I don't think it would be terribly efficient to convert to this hybrid method, even with the checks and balance veto proposed. And how I see that working is we have a strong mayor. They select their next charter, whoever that might be, and it comes before the commission, and the commission vetoes it. And then they have to go back, and they have to go back. And it just keeps going because they could be at polar opposites of what the city needs, and no work gets accomplished because while we hold the veto, they will just keep putting forward people that they are dead set on having, or people of a certain caliber they are dead set on having. And we, as the last hold, keep saying no to that, and meanwhile work doesn't get accomplished. Or we have interims or acting officials in the meantime. And so those give me a lot of pause, because they are entirely in the realm of possibility. And so the question of what are we trying to fix, and I don't see anything that is on fire necessarily. I see a working within the realm of possible and reality system at the moment. And it is, I think as the mayor told me earlier, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. I think we have something that maybe not in the best way, maybe not in the fastest way, is moving forward. And I hesitate to experiment with something that has these very catastrophic potential pitfalls. So that is where I am now. I worry about giving that much power to one individual, and I guess the absolute lack of requirements or qualifications that we could impose on someone doing that. So that is where I sit now. If anyone has answers or suggestions to those concerns, I'd be happy to hear them, but those are very big concerns for me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Duckenbach.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ariola, for a very thoughtful presentation. I would like to ditto what Commissioner Sacco has just stated. And we have heard the concerns about power, and I must say that those are concerns that I have as well. That type of centralized power could potentially lead to abuse of power. And then you're stuck with that for a number of years until the next election rolls around, or the next time these rules get changed. And that is, that's a major concern to me. And I don't really want to belabor the point because I think you've heard it a lot up here, but the issue of power will always be a concern for me, and I'm willing to hear something else from you if you can speak to that point. But right now, I can tell you that that's going to be a major point of concern that would lead me towards more of a no than a yes.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I have a bunch of thoughts. Having been in the position for a hot minute, it is definitely true that most people think the mayor has unilateral power to address any problem and solve whatever the issue is. And so, I spend a good deal of time fielding calls, fielding requests, trying to figure out what any individual's problem or challenge is, and then try to find or align them with assistance, whether it's from within the city or an outside organization or whatever it is. Because you don't want to just say, no, I don't have the power to do that. That's not my job. So, there is an expectation there, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, that's whatever. That's the way the job is. So I'll start out by kind of just saying that if this were a sort of formal debate, you could give me pro or con, and I believe I could argue either side effectively. Like, that's how uncommitted I am to whether this proposal would be a benefit or not. I see advantages and disadvantages for sure. So very high level, what I do think about are cities around our country and actually around the world who are accomplishing incredible things. And one common thread that most of them have is they have a strong mayor. Someone runs on a set of issues, they get elected, they put all of their effort towards accomplishing those things, and you see incredible transformational change in relatively short periods of time. the, not the opposite, but the sort of negative, you think about film, the sort of negative of that is, I think the concern that Commissioner Sacco has, that somebody can get elected in one of these cities and cause incredible damage in a short period of time. You know, we've seen that in our own country. We've seen that. I kind of unfortunately think about a few cities in Brazil who, you know, have just, you know, many years of gains have been wiped out by like one bad leader. So there's, you know, like if you were wanting to support this, I think you could find some incredible cities. I'm just thinking about, you know, Keisha Lance Bottoms, what she's doing in Atlanta, Mayor Cantrell in New Orleans, Mayor Schaaf in Oakland, Melvin Carter up in St. Paul. Like they're doing amazing things, and they're all strong mayors, and they sort of told their folk when they're running for election, this is what I stand for, this is what I'm going to do, and then they're doing it, right? It also, I've seen it work horribly wrong, you know, that the mayor and the city council are at such odds. You know, I know somebody that I met and grew very fond of and have been following is Mayor Woodfin up in Montgomery, and you know, he's gone through bouts where he instructs his staff to not show up for the city council meetings. Like, I don't want any of y'all showing up because he's at such odds with the council. Like that's, so, you know, it can work both ways. This is not necessarily part of what you're suggesting, Commissioner, but it is something at some point we've got to have a serious conversation about. The majority of you, including myself, if not all of you, have quit your primary job, your primary source of income, because this takes so much. This takes so much time and it takes so much emotional energy that you can't do it. You can't do both. And so we need to have a conversation if we want people to really dedicate themselves to this, especially to rise to the level of expectation that our neighbors have of us. You've got to compensate it so people can support themselves and their families. I mean, that's just it. I think all of us fight very hard for fair pay and fair wages for our city staff, for everybody else in the community. Yet we
not for ourselves.
Yeah, not for ourselves. You know, and that significantly diminishes the pool of people who are willing to do this job. There are lots of exceptional, qualified people with an incredible diverse set of experiences that would add greatly. And you, of course, all know I'm not speaking about any of you. I love serving with every one of you. But we get a bigger pool. And so that's part of the barriers we have. You know, how much time can we spend on this? And then what does it do to us personally when we have to give up our, you know, careers and primary source of income just to be able to do the job competently? You know, I can see, so it's been said many times that folks are worried about the concentration or increase in power in one position. And I hear you. I'm seeing it very differently. Like as a sitting mayor, I've got a vote. With this, I would no longer have a vote, which to me says I don't really have any power. Like that power is being stripped away, and I'm now simply executing the will of the commission. And so I kind of go through this mental exercise. What would I run on if I were running for mayor under this system? Like what would I, because I can't tell people I'm gonna like, these are my goals or priorities, or, you know, I want to, you know, address, you know, racial inequity or increase access to after and out of school time, or because I don't get to vote on any of those things. It's up to the commission. I am going to be responsible for carrying out whatever the legislative body tells me to do. So I just wonder, like, who's going to run for that job, and what is their ask of the voters to consider them? You know, I really, that's a little bit hard to answer for me. Like, I really don't know what that would look like. But I view it as a loss of power, because ultimately our power is our vote. I mean, that's what determines whether policies get adopted or not. And so if you don't have a vote, it takes that away. Another major drawback to me, and several of you have brought this up, but you would be expecting somebody to essentially oversee a very complex organization. We're one of the most complex cities in the entire state, big or small. I mean, very few cities have 5 utilities, you know, a full-time, you know, highly professional police department and fire department, and, you know, the kind of transit system we have. I mean, to get an executive that has the management and executive experience to do that, I'm just going to say I think there's a pretty small pool of people that have those skill sets. And then you layer on top of that people that are politically inclined, that actually want to put themselves out there and run for office and sort of expose themselves. That's really going to narrow that pool down. So that part does give me a lot of concern. I think it can be somewhat ameliorated with the systems where the mayor appoints, say, a deputy mayor or a chief administrator that does have that experience. And so the mayor is sort of thinking about the big picture stuff and how do we advance the commission's priorities, and then this deputy mayor, chief administrator, figures out how to, you know, operationalize that. But it is still a concern. You know, decentralization of power definitely has its advantages and disadvantages. It's a lot harder to get major, deep policy advanced and accomplished. That, of course, is the check on abuse of power or bad decisions being made. You know, so when there's significant immediate needs or just massive structural problems in a community, it's really hard to make significant change with the type of system we have. I will, especially when there's frequent turnover on the commission. You know, I mean, as you all, you know well, the learning curve is steep. Dynamics that change are difficult to sort of figure out where do people stand on certain issues. So, you know, I have seen it be a barrier to significant change that I think generally the community is supportive of and generally the commission is supportive of, but the you know, agreeing on how to do it is really, really hard. But I will say I've definitely served on commissions where, because of that, really horrible policy has been prevented as well. You know, I mean, there's times when I think it has worked to our advantage as a community. And one other thing, if this were to happen, I think it would be really, really important to pull out the Office of Equity and Inclusion and keep it completely independent. So independent of the mayor's office, you know, hired by the commission, but operating as an independent entity, you know, answerable only to the commission. Because I think otherwise there's going to be concerns about conflict of interest or impartiality or things like that. So where I see this going next is through a really well thought out community engagement process. And I think it's so awesome that we just got our update on that today. This to me is something that is really well positioned to use that toolkit for. Because I want to ask our community the question that Commissioner Johnson started out our conversation asking. Really, what problem is it we're trying to solve? And, I think that gets to a deeper thing. What do you feel works well with your city government? What are your frustrations? Getting a really good understanding, is it access to your government? Is it lack of understanding of processes? Are things moving too quickly? Are things moving too slowly? I mean, we can really get down to the roots of that. And then once we have a really good understanding with a valid representative sample, I'll just really emphasize that point, a valid representative sample of our neighbors, then we can say, okay, well, what changes could we make without a charter change to address those? Maybe that's it. Or the only way to address these changes is through a charter change. What does that look like? I think that is a good use of time and resources, because I think it will also help us hear from and better understand other challenges or opportunities we might have, in our city, not just related to sort of strong, weak mayor or governmental structure. So I'll go back to Commissioner Hayes Santos, and then I'll go back to you, Commissioner Ariola, for any sort of summarizing thoughts, and then we'll go to public comment. Commissioner Hayes Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. And that was actually on my list as well. I forgot to mention it before. Was having the clerk, auditor, and the EO would be hired directly by the city commission, and that the other ones, the more day-to-day management ones, would be under the mayor. To go to Commissioner Sacco's point, I mean, I think giving the power of the commission to remove a mayor, if it's, I think that's something. I mean, maybe not majority vote, but something like that. I mean, I think that's something that other cities have done. Other cities have also, in their charters, dealt with the issue that you brought up, where, in kind of very different ways, but where there's no agreement on a charter officer or director or stuff like that. There are ways to kind of solve that. Sometimes it goes to the commission just gets to, they can't, somebody tries and the commission does, or it has to be a supermajority or things like that. I think the mayor brought up two other points that I think are important. I mean, our compensation. This is not a part-time job, and I think a lot of people don't run for this office because of that. And it's hard. I also think this actually would take a change in our charter, but I think one other thing that would allow us to do our job better, and I think we would serve the public better, is allowing us to directly hire an aides or constituent services by commissioners. I think that would make a significant difference in how we can serve our residents. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a meeting with the mayor of Tallahassee, I think yesterday, 2 days ago, and he has 3 people that work directly for him and in different areas, and I was just envious. I mean, he's able to sort of direct them out to take care of a lot of those day-to-day functions. And that's just one example. So anyway, that's something we haven't talked about in a while, but I think it's a valid discussion, part of this discussion as well. All right, Commissioner Ariola, you got a lot of feedback.
And that's exactly what I wanted. So thank you all. And a lot of what was brought up, both in support and in concern, were things that I had thought about, and I needed to hear them. Sometimes you need to hear your doubts articulated through somebody else's perspective, so that you can get a better understanding of it. And so I view my job, I heard a lot of concern about the word power, and I'm with you, Mr. Mayor. I think what I want to convey is I want to try to convince you all that this is not as much power as it sounds like going to one office, because all vested authority is still with the city commission. That is important. And I thought about it from that perspective as a commissioner too. As a commissioner, if this system were to exist going forward and I were to be a commissioner to working with a mayor like this, how would that affect how I view my current job, and how would that affect? And the only thing that I realized was the big difference is really only the sort of the elevation of the mayor's representation for me as a commissioner, knowing that now I have an elected official who has the ability to sort of organize our policy discussions, not just legislatively, but administratively, and to sort of streamline it. I don't think that it necessarily means that there's a whole slew of power being added to the mayor's office. I look at it as a responsibility. That's what I see. And so I don't think that it is such a proposition that it's as strong as some of the other systems in other cities have had. I just don't see it that way. But I can absolutely appreciate the perspective that with a change in government, with a change in this position, is going to necessitate a lot of rethinking in terms of how we get things done. And I can appreciate the difficulty that might bring about, because we're still, even today, just trying to figure out how to get things done within our system of government. So I understand it's an added layer of thought. That's why I wanted to sort of set aside classroom time for GPC, where we can talk about this and not have to feel as though we've got to make a decision on it. The question about voter turnout and the qualification of candidates is very interesting to me, because I think it is directly tied to compensation, and I think that any elevation of the commission in general, which this essentially, I think this consolidates vested authority with the city commission as a whole. We're adding a little bit more responsibility to the mayor's office, but I think the city commission as a whole is vesting more authority in this particular change. And so I think that you would have to see a veritable change in compensation for a system like this. I think that goes without saying. And I want to read this from the charter, to your point, Raina, about the, I guess we'll just call it sort of worst case scenario of a Mayor Trump. Oh God, that sounded horrible when I said it. But this is in the charter. The commission shall be the judge of the qualifications of its own members, subject to review by the courts, and shall elect one member as the mayor commissioner pro tem. The commission may determine its own rules of procedure and may punish its own members for misconduct. A majority of all the members of the commission constitutes a quorum to do business, but a smaller number may adjourn. There are already pieces in place. There are already state recall rules, and as I mentioned, we would have to talk about an impeachment process, because naturally, I think that exists. Another concern that I heard was sort of the origin. I agree that this has to be a grassroots community conversation. It has to be, to the mayor's point, something that asks people to envision their government. How do you want your government to run? I want that to be the question, and that's the question I got to ask. And it didn't start with how do we make a mayor's office that is more suitable to a hybrid stronger form. The question I asked was, how do we take what I am going to very respectfully refer to as a 20th century charter and turn it into a 21st century charter that catches up with the progress that this city has made in just the time that I've been alive. This city has grown not just in terms of size, but in terms of quality. The people who are coming to Gainesville and then going around the world are making massive, massive impacts everywhere. This city is becoming more than I think anyone ever thought it could. Maybe some of the original thinkers of bringing a flagship to Gainesville might beat me on that. But I think that what we've seen in Gainesville is a shift to what greater, larger cities are doing in terms of the ideas that we engage with and the ideas that we're asking people to think about, that this government is asking people to think about. And it's rubbing off on the other governments. I don't know if you've noticed. All of that, I think calls for this question. So I want us to keep the conversation going. I wrote down all of your feedback. I didn't go into the rabbit hole of some charters would be under the mayor, some would be under the commission. That could just as easily work as the system that I proposed. I think it would work just with some small technical differences. So I think the sort of appropriate ask now is, without objection, if we could take this up after our recess. I would like for us to come up with, when we take it up and come back, so I'll motion that we ask, when we bring this back up at a future meeting, whether it's GPC or a meeting, I don't think we'll need as long as the time as we set out for the 2 presentations this time. But if we do that, we could ask staff to come back with what would be a sort of a perspective, sort of community engagement process.
Second. I think you just said when it comes back next, so we'll take that up when it.
I thought it was a motion. It is a motion.
To do what?
Just to authorize staff to begin ideating community engagement around a question of Gainesville's governance. It doesn't necessarily have to be, yes or no, strong mayor, but just a general question about Gainesville's governance, because it's sort of an initial conversation. And some of the things we talked about would necessitate charter changes, particularly when you're talking about composition and charter interference questions, independence rather, not interference. But you could probably have some ordinances and some rule changes that we just haven't stumbled upon yet. But we needed to get this conversation going. Thank you all so much. I needed to hear this. As you said, Commissioner Ward, this has been sort of sitting in my head for a little while. My paper here was first marked in January, so it's now May. One last thing, speaking of equity, I didn't include this because it has nothing to do with mayor's charter, but I think it would be really cool to talk about adding an equity board to the charter so that we have a board of advisors whose permanent job in perpetuity will be to advise the city on continuing its equity policies. The same way we have elevated nature commissions and bicycle pedestrian boards and all that, we have one permanently for the equity.
All right. Thank you very much, Commissioner, for your work on that and your presentation and receiving our feedback. So we'll now open it up to the public. We do have a motion on the floor. Madam Clerk, if you didn't catch that, the motion was made by Commissioner Ariel and seconded by Hayes Santos to have staff prepare a community engagement framework for assessing Gainesville's government structure and governance.
Yeah, governance.
Okay. All right. Just give us 1 sec for Ms. Malden, and then we will solicit public input. We'll alternate between people in chambers and people on the line. So we'll start with anybody inside the City Commission chamber that would like to speak to the motion. Ms. Shepherd?
Hi, my name is Don Shepard. I'm People's Representative. I take that to heart. And then as of that, I want to go back to the forum. When we were in the forum at the running off of mayor and commissioners, this here viewpoint should have been allocated then. Was not. I did not hear any strong points of that in the forums, and that should have been allocated then. The people voted for the wrong person. They did not understand what the responsibilities of a mayor or a commissioner was. These people are citizens. They have not had the privilege to take and sit back there. They haven't had the privilege to take and do the work that a mayor or commissioner does. In the 12 years I've ran as a commissioner and mayor, I've had that privilege. I've done a 364 financial guide of this, and I've seen what the wide shoulders of this mayor has done for the city and what he hasn't done for the city. So there's a lot of research that needs to be done in the answering of your questions, commissioners, and the fair pay. I think that you knew what the pay was when you become a commissioner. When you ran for a commissioner or a mayor, you knew what the pay was. For to ask for more pay afterwards, I think that's a disgracement to the public. For them to take in, for one to take and ask for more after they became in office. Yes, you may or may not have known the responsibilities which you were or were not going to have when you get into that chair. But that should have been looked at or questioned before you got there. You should have enhanced the knowledge before you got there. We've had some commissioners in the past that had. And so I wanted to say that I look forward to seeing what the request is going to take and be and come out of this commission and the committee that is to come, I guess, after this, what do you say, break. So I would like to adjourn and thank you for that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Shepherd. Larry, over to you. Do we have anybody on the line to speak to this item?
Yes, sir. We've got Brian O'Brien as our first speaker, to be followed by Nathan Scott, Mary Lou Hildreth, and Debbie Martinez, alternating back and forth with the chamber. So Mr. O'Brien should be live. Mr. O'Brien.
Hi, Larry. Thank you very much. Commissioner Ariola, thank you for that presentation. It really helped to bring out in the open what's been cooking. Your attempt to get an opportunity to recast history here is just fascinating and hilarious and terrifying all at the same time. The Charter Review Commission just rejected this idea. They're the board, you'll recall, that was specifically given the task of taking up the charter. So as usual, Mr. Poe would like to recast history, and you're carrying the water for him. It really says all the worst things about, but let's give Mr. Poe a report card since he's stumping for a strong mayor. Mr. Poe, your shocking disregard for the current predicament that the city's in is just unbelievable. You have been the worst steward of the city's resources likely in history. You have degraded the trust of the citizens of Gainesville and because the city is teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. You have near $2 billion worth of debt, and you folks want to give somebody a raise every time we meet. This is shocking. Furthermore, from the time that you refused to be transparent with the 2018 CAFR, there's been a series of events occurring, and there's still a sworn complaint on the desk of the state's attorney regarding your failure to follow the law. When the JLAC did go ahead and decide to do an operational audit of the city, you took it upon yourself to issue a letter without any power from the commission. You've already been acting as a strong mayor for years. And your illegal use of power under these emergency orders from the state is shocking abuse of power. I just am so glad that you brought this forward, that you would like more power, because it's a great time to discuss it. David himself can't define what questions he wants us to start paying the city staff to work on. Your EO officer and communications folks just told you to come up with clear goals. It wasn't an hour ago, and you already are muddying the water again. I can only feel sorry for the dedicated staff and public servants that work for the city.
Mayor, that's 3
under your failed leadership.
Thank you,
Really
Mr.
is
O'Brien.
shocking.
Appreciate that. We'll
Thank
take
you,
the
Larry.
next speaker. Anybody inside the chambers that wishes to speak to this motion? Anybody else? No? Okay, Larry, we don't have anybody else in chambers. We'll go back to you.
Yes, sir. We've got Nathan Scott, followed by Mary Lou Hildreth and Debbie Martinez. Nathan?
Thank you, Larry. Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioner Nathan Scott. I just want to state for the record that the Charter Review Commission specifically considered and rejected the strong mayor proposal. They also specifically considered and rejected increasing the commissioner salaries and mayor salaries. Now, the composition of the Gainesville Charter Review Commission, which did this about a year ago, had no political diversity. They were all your hand-picked supporters, up to and including your paid campaign consultant that served as an alternate. So I think it is completely and utterly reprehensible that we would waste taxpayer money and staff time addressing this power grab. It's even more reprehensible that you would waste taxpayer money going to community outreach, trying to get some support for this power grab. I truly hope that you just skip the community engagement and put this on the ballot so it can be voted down by your constituents. Because clearly you're not spending your time on priorities, commissioners. How many hours have we spent today discussing this nonsense that you won't have an intelligent discussion about the city budget, 30 minutes with no substantive questions on the issues, and you won't discuss GRU's budget or proposals from your constituents? I mean, it's just amazing. It blows my mind that you could be so arrogant to have this discussion and put off other more important challenges facing the city. You know, it's funny. One way to hear from your community would be listen to the people that comment on agenda items at the city commission meetings, but you never like that input. So here we go again, where Rome is burning and you're discussing the color of the tulips. It's misplaced priority after misplaced priority, commissioners. So please be arrogant enough to put this on the ballot and watch it get shot down summarily. This is ridiculous. It's a waste of taxpayer money. Again, the Charter Review Commission themselves that you appointed specifically considered and rejected this. And it did not go in a recommendation to the city commission, and it did not go on the ballot. So why are we having this discussion? Tell me, please tell me what the problem to be solved is, because that was their purview. And I'm sure you'll probably hear from a Charter Review committee member in a second that'll probably tell you the same thing.
Mayor, that's 3 minutes.
What you're hearing is unified, consistent
Right. Thank you,
messaging
Mr. Scott.
from constituents.
Mr.
and
Attorney Gomez,
taxpayers.
you were out of the chamber when I asked for any public comment. You're good? Okay. Okay. Then we will go to Larry, the next caller on the phone.
Yeah, Mary Lou Hildreth, followed by Debbie Martinez. Ms. Hildreth.
Hi, Larry. Hi, Mayor, Powell, Commissioners. So I'm off. I took today and tomorrow off, so you're joining me full side. So it's much more palatable to listen to a workshop or commission meeting if you're floating around. But you know, with all due respect, Commissioner Ariola, I just hands down disagree with you. As the chairman of the Charter Review Commission, I found it a little insulting. We had an August group, the least of which was me, as far as I'm concerned, former elected officials and community people that are active in the community. I mean, we talked about ranked voting, we talked about the number of commissioners going from 7 to 5, and now you want to add one? That's insane. You know, the charter officers having the GRU manager report to the city manager, commission salaries. This was not even on our radar. And I met with Commissioner Hayes Santos, Commissioner Ward, Commissioner Warren at the time. I talked to Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Simmons. I never once spoke to you about this issue at all, then or since. So when you say you talked to these people and we all considered it heavily or whatever, I beg to disagree unless I've got COVID brain. You know, you all create policy and the charters and the staff administer it. And I agree with Commissioner Sacco. You know, what if somebody unqualified becomes mayor? They could be a house painter or landscape architect, nothing wrong with those professions. But you have city managers, which is the most common and successful in the nation. And I know my municipal government stuff. And, you know, what if they're not, don't meet the requirements or the qualifications
I agree with Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Duncan Walker about centralized power and abuse of power. It just looks to me like a recipe for disaster. And I also agree, believe it or not, with Nathan Scott and Brian O'Brien, don't put me on the dark side, but, you know, don't waste more staff time. There's no grassroots, Commissioner Ward said, there is no grassroots effort on, I don't know where this came from, out of what dark alley, but it's ludicrous. And I think we need to get through the ARPA issues and get the money into our communities and help our communities and not waste more staff time. Which again, now I'm a staffer, former elected official. I think you put this stuff on the staff with that, all these things. They do a great job, but it wears me out just listening to it. So with that note, I'm going to take my hot self and jump back in the pool. Good day.
Mayor, just for the record, I believe that's the first call that we've taken from a pool. We will.
I wish I was there with you. Thank you. To the chambers, Armando. 3 minutes.
Mr. Johnson, whew, I was Larry throwing some shade there. All right. I empathize. Bless Mary Lou's little heart. I also am too a little bit concerned with the commissioner's presentation, not on its merits, but in the spirit of it, and that it just seems like we always want to. Some of you mentioned there was a missing of the mark, and I think it's the spirit of the people, not just the people that you agree with you, or your friends or people that you might have appointed to the CRC, people that disagree with you too. And to Commissioner,
unmute yourself. Press the star key twice.
Can I get my time back? Because that just.
Hi, is this on? Hear me?
Can somebody give me my time back, please? Hello.
Hi, just confirming.
Hello.
Sorry about that.
Can I get my time back, please?
If you'll give me 1 moment, this is my first time doing this.
No problem. Take your time.
Do I stop it? Okay. You got it back.
Thank you, Beck. Thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem, it's still counting down. I was at 2:17.
Oh, I'm going to give you an extra 30
thank
seconds.
You. So the thing that I'm concerned about in the spirit of it is what Mayor Pro Tem is what our commissioner from District 1 mentioned, is that not only the centralization of power, but we've already seen some problems here currently in the system. It just seems like there will be a selection of people that are already left out with a strong mayor. I'm familiar with many strong mayors, actually lived in Pensacola as well. There's many examples of it. So Jacksonville is not necessarily better off. So just because a strong mayor is, we're looking at what the balance of power is going to be. If we have a tenuous relationship already with our minority communities, specifically Black, Brown, and Latin communities, some are represented others, but there's not necessarily been a reaching out or willing to reach out to have equitable discussions. And I really didn't hear that from the commissioner or in his presentation to address that. And community transparency is extremely important. Can you let him know I did have some additional time because it was taken away from me, just so he knows. The other thing that I would like to hear from the commissioner that I did not hear from is, it just appears with all that's been going on with our charters lately, are we going down this path because we're seeing some uncomfortableness or what's going on within our charters? We've had some tenuous things going on, not just recently, even before. So we're saying, but because we have this level of discomfort or with this level with our charters, this is a reason why we should try to go down the path of a smart mayor, or a strong mayor form of government. I don't think that necessarily leads to it. And to Commissioner Sacco's point is that she alluded to it, but we're just going to say the name. When your predecessor, Mr. Mayor, was there, some would say that wasn't necessarily a better form of governance. So we should be careful what we ask for, because you might want it on one end, and then on the other end, you get somebody you don't agree with so much, and then you have the level of governance you ask for. So I would like a level of transparency and community, and really have the community's input on all sides and not just people that we agree with, because I could tell you people in the East Side, we have not been talking about a strong mayor form of government. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Last call in the chambers on the telephones?
We do have a caller on the phone, Mayor.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we've got Debbie Martinez, and also following her, Darlene Buffalo. Debbie?
Yes, thank you, Larry. Appreciate you taking my call. I remember fondly and with great admiration when former District 1 City Commissioner Ed Jennings Sr. spoke with great conviction at so many city meetings, a man who mastered the art of critical thinking. What I hear today from many members on this commission is a lack of critical thinking skills and purposely manipulating words for selfish purposes. Our city is not the size of Atlanta or New Orleans, and we are not the capital of Florida. Former Commissioner Ed Jennings Sr. knew that public service should never become a career opportunity and voted against the majority on many power grabs like voting commissioners a 26.2% pay raise. Commissioner Jennings kept his hands clean and refused to go along to get along with reckless and unnecessary policies. It's as though I can still hear him today. He spoke out against commissioners' power grabs and against policies that could and would put our youth and neighbors in harm's way. Commissioner Jennings understood that once you opened that risky door, it would be difficult to close it, and he turned out to be absolutely correct. There is a huge difference between wanting something and needing something. Discussions of considering a strong mayor system of government appears to be another power grab and not necessary. And once again, it appears that some members on this commission are using the coronavirus as a reason to make unnecessary changes. On numerous occasions, I praise this commission on how well you handled the pandemic under our city's current system. Each member equal to one another. It was bad enough when District 1's voice was diluted when the commission championed expanding our commission from 5 members to 7. You have many priorities on your plate, and this is certainly not one of them. And I believe Commissioner Ed Jennings Sr. would agree. Thank you for taking my time.
And Mayor Darlene Buffalo is our last caller. Darlene?
Yes, commissioners, thank you for taking my call. I couldn't agree more with Debbie Martinez. I mean, we have priorities, and I don't think the money is there to do that. I think that common sense is being lost with the commission, and I also agree if you're going to do something like this, I don't think this is the correct time to do it. But if you're going to do it, I believe that what Nathan Scott said, if you're going to do something like this, put it on the ballot and listen to what the citizens have voted you into office for, have a way to speak on what you're doing. Thank you for your time, commissioners.
It's a final caller.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else in the chamber? You've already spoken, Mr. Shepard. No, it was on a different topic. Yeah, that was different. That was a different topic, Mr. Shepard. Okay, we'll close public comment. Turn back to Commissioner Ariola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I felt the need to just set the record straight on what has been voted on by the Charter Review Commission and what hasn't. What I presented today was not what was brought before the discussion in the Charter Review Commission, and I have great appreciation for all the members of the Charter Commission, those who voted to not go forward with that discussion, and those who did want to see that discussion go forward. And I've had conversations with members on both sides. And so for me, this was not something that came up because of that process. This is very much an independent thought process, and I have deep admiration for the people who served and what came of that. I also have deep admiration for the people who serve up here. And I think that we have a special, unique opportunity to have this conversation as an experienced commission. Many of us are reelected, and as the mayor mentioned, that doesn't always occur. And I think you have to take advantage of good experience when you get it, especially when it's in an elected body that has term limits like we do. And to be fair, it will be another. I lost exactly how many years you've been serving, Mr. Mayor, but it will be a long time until we have someone with Lauren Poe's experience sitting in that seat again. And I would be remiss if I wanted to bring this up and to not bring that up while Lauren Poe is sitting as mayor. And so that was my reasoning for wanting to go on an independent process to bringing this up.
because naturally it has to do with his office and his position, but not has nothing to do with Lauren per se. It's just the official capacity. So I hope that we can just sort of move past that. I don't want to get into the discussion as to what discussion happened at the Charter Review Commission, because I really think that we have every bit of respect and ability, and it's because that this came up at the Charter Review Commission that I think we're having this sort of other conversation. This is an independent process that I proposed, and so I'm willing to accept sort of criticisms if you have a criticism with that, that's okay. But I just don't want people to think that what we talked about today was what was voted against moving forward in the Charter Review Commission, because it wasn't. This is a completely separate process, completely different research. They had completely different people come in and present, not the same ideas, not the same vote. And I just wanted to set the record straight on that, because I've heard a few people, and a member did call in, and I just wanted to state that for the record, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, and I'll thank the grace of the charter for term limits and the fact that I will be done with my public service as part of the city commission before we know it. Okay, we have a motion on the floor to ask staff to come back to us with a framework for community engagement surrounding Gainesville's governance structure. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed? No. Motion passes 5-2 with Johnson and Duncan Walker in dissent. All right, our last item on the agenda is a state legislative update for the 2021 session as we unclench our shoulders. So, Mr. Feldman.
Mayor, we had removed that from the agenda due to a scheduling conflict.
What? Not the agenda we approved.
I think we had submitted that earlier.
When we adopted the agenda, it was still on there. I guess what I'm intuiting from what. Oh, I see. Yeah. So I guess what I'm intuiting is that our state lobbyists are not with us.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we need them here for this since they were the boots on the ground for us. So commission is there just a motion to strike that?
Awesome.
There's a second. Motion and second to strike. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed. The motion passes unanimously. Any member comment? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very briefly, the county's information officer contacted me a few minutes ago to let me know that they are about to implement a burn ban, a countywide burn ban, and wondered if we could do exactly what I'm doing now and just let anyone watching know that they need to be on the watch for that and be very, very careful with starting any fires. Thanks.
Thank you. It is dry out there as my lawn, I put it in quotes, is showing me. Commissioner Johnson.
Thanks. We got an email a couple of weeks ago about our election process, and I want to get clarification about how that's being handled, whether it's in the city manager's office or whether it's in Nicole Shelley's office.
You mean the districts? Redistricting?
The redistricting.
Oh, yeah. Redistricting, Mr. Feldman, is that with you or the attorney?
I think it's with me at this point. I think I sort of volunteered to contact our past consultant and to proceed on that when we met as charters, but I have no strong feelings as to where it sits.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Johnson?
If he has no strong feelings about where it sits, I prefer that it is in the city attorney's office, as has been the protocol.
Sure.
So, without objection.
Yeah, without objection. My memory from 10 years ago was that it was handled through the attorney's office. Yeah, and I think ultimately it has to be drafted by the attorney anyway, so that's fine. That was that life for that, right? Commissioner A. Santos?
Thank you, Mayor. So on that same issue, this is going to be a weird time because of the delay in, normally I think there's like 2 years of time from the census when we census an actual election. But we have a much more abbreviated version of it. And I think we should have a discussion of what we want to, how we want to handle it. I mean, I think in the past or sometime there's been a board that has looked at it. Do we want to have the consultant bring back plans, and we can also have it go out to the public, and the public could also submit potential districts. I don't know if we can take as much time as we had taken in the past, because we won't get these census numbers, I think, back until August, and we do have to give enough time for whoever you're gonna run for office to know what they're actually running for too.
Yeah, let's just put it on GPC agenda for sometime in the next quarter. We'll give the attorney some time to work on process and looking at who might be able to assist us with that and give us a timeline on all that. Okay, well, thank you all. Hope you enjoy your weekend, and with no further business before us, we are adjourned. Not on